Chapter 448. Cold Ice Fruit. Strangely enough, the ice that even a fifth-tier martial king could not penetrate was defenseless against the blood bodhi. The blood bodhi sprouted terrifying demonic roots. This time, the roots were not rooted in the soil, but in the thick ice. Roots that looked like blood vessels quickly penetrated the ice layer and wrapped around the huge frost WRM's corpse. The blood bodhi of the Azura of the blood world is really strange. Yifei looked at the blood bodhi strangely. He remembered that the demon emperor had said that the blood bodhi was a special product of the Azura of the blood world. There should not be any in the Tianwu continent. He wondered where the blood demon sect had gotten the blood bodhi. The battle between the flood dragon and the North Sea King was still going on fiercely outside. The flood dragon had the support of the cold air emitted by the frost dragon in the cold pond. It relied on the super strong defense and attack power of the ice to beat the North Sea King, who was a 10th layer martial king, with its strength of the 9th layer martial king realm. However, the North Sea King was not easy to deal with. He was still attacking desperately, hoping that Steward Lin would come quickly so that they could work together to kill the flood dragon. Moreover, the North Sea King noticed that as the battle continued, the flood dragon became anxious. All creatures had spirits, not to mention the flood dragon, which might become a divine dragon in the future. When the blood bodhi began to absorb the remaining blood chi of the frost dragon, the flood dragon, who was still fighting the North Sea King, felt that something was wrong. Even if it kept devouring the cold air and attacking the North Sea King, the cold air in the cold pond was being consumed too quickly. At first, the flood dragon did not have time to pay attention to it. However, as the cold air from the pond decreased rapidly, the flood dragon realized that even though it was a demonic beast, it was not inferior to humans. Furthermore, this was a 9th layer martial king realm flood dragon. At this moment, how could it not know that its nest had been robbed while it was fighting the Northern Sea King? Needless to say, the corpse of the frost dragon must have been discovered. Roar! Realizing this, the flood dragon let out a deafening roar. The corpse of the frost dragon was very important to it. It would not allow anyone to steal or destroy it. Evil flood dragon, where do you think you're going? Today, you'll be cut down by my sword. Seeing that the flood dragon was retreating, the king of Beihai misunderstood. He thought that the flood dragon was no match for him. So he began to retreat to his lair timidly. As for the North Sea King, he had sacrificed more than 500 of his subordinates to force the flood dragon out and wait for an opportunity to kill it. How could he let the flood dragon escape back into the deep pool so easily? Sword suppresses mountains and rivers. Regardless of his exhaustion from the battle, the king of Beihai swung his sword forward. The huge sword light formed a torrential river, drowning the sky and the retreating flood dragon. Roar! When the flood dragon realized that its home had been robbed, it was extremely anxious. However, the humans in front of it still dared to stop it. Needless to say, these humans must be in cahoots. All of them deserve to die. All humans deserve to die. Only by killing this human in front of it could it rush back to its nest and kill the thief who dared to break into its nest. Roar, roar, roar. The dragon's roar shook the sky. The flood dragon was completely enraged. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws, spewing out endless cold air that froze all the surrounding waves. It simply swooped down in front of the king of Beihai to engage in close combat. The sharp dragon claws quickly tore large bloody wounds on the king of Beihai's body. The excruciating pain made the king of Beihai even more ruthless. He slashed the flood dragon again and again with his combat sword. In the sky, flesh and blood flew everywhere, and scales were broken. As the cold air in the cold pool decreased rapidly, the flood dragon was finally unable to withstand the attacks of the king of Beihai, who was a 10th level martial king. It was seriously injured. However, the injured flood dragon was really crazy. Even though it was injured, it kept biting and tearing at the king of Beihai's body. The king of Beihai's purple robe was torn into pieces, revealing the huge and hideous wounds on his body. What's going on? Has this flood dragon gone mad? Why does it seem like it wants to fight me to the death? However, Even if you try your best, you're still destined to die in my hands. After I kill you, I'll go back and settle accounts with that damned servant of yours, Director Lin." The king of Beihai was very angry. He had stalled the flood dragon for at least half a day here. However, Director Lin, who should have come with the masters of the mansion, did not show up. Suddenly, the king of Beihai felt like he had been stood up by his servant. The king of Beihai was so angry that his face twisted. If it were not for the fact that the reinforcements of the mansion did not arrive in time, the king of Beihai would not have to risk his life to fight a beast to such an extent. Even if he killed the flood dragon in the end, it would be an absolutely tragic victory. Inside the cold pool, Yi Fei had no idea that the flood dragon had discovered that something had happened to its nest and was desperately trying to rush back. The king of Beihai, who did not know the situation, was also trying his best to stall the flood dragon, not giving the evil flood dragon a chance to escape back to its nest. In this tug-of-war, Yi Fei was a little worried that the flood dragon might return to its nest and make trouble for him. However, after waiting for a few hours, the flood dragon did not show any signs of returning to the cold pool. Instead, it had been absorbing for a few hours. The remaining blood chi in the huge dragon corpse in front of him was finally completely absorbed by the blood bodhi. The entire blood bodhi began to bloom and bear fruit again. However, perhaps the blood bodhi did not take root in the soil this time, but the blood bodhi did not take root in the ice this time. Like the last time when the blood bodhi matured, the polluted azurite demonic soil did not appear. The matured blood bodhi in front of Yi Fei did not condense the bodhi of all living beings that he was familiar with. Instead, it condensed a frost fruit that exuded an astonishing cold chi. What is this? Shouldn't the blood bodhi's fruit be the bodhi of all living beings? What with this frost fruit? Yi Fei held the frost fruit in his hand, somewhat baffled. Immediately, he felt the astonishing spiritual chi and icy aura contained in it. Can this thing really be eaten? It won't freeze me to death, right? Yi Fei hesitated as he looked at the mutated bodhi fruit in his hand. Just as he was hesitating, the entire cold pool started to shake violently. This was clearly not the movement of the flood dragon. Oh no, the flood dragon can't hold on any longer. It seems like the North Sea King is the one rushing down this time. Yi Fei's face changed. He couldn't care less. A poor kid who came from a barren place wouldn't be so particular. To Yi Fei, the safest way to get a treasure was to eat it in one gulp. Gulp. Without hesitation, he swallowed the strange bodhi of all living beings. After confirming that there was nothing else in the cave that was worth looting, Yi Fei rushed out of the ice layer and left the cold pool. Just as Yi Fei escaped from the cold pool, a figure in the sky had already rushed down with ecstasy and complacency. "Ha ha, evil flood dragon, struggle as much as you want under my billowing sword essence. Wait until I take the treasure in the cold pool. Then I'll peel off your tendons and skin you." Suddenly, the North Sea King could no longer laugh. Extreme shock flashed across his face. He actually saw a figure rushing out of the cold pool at an extremely fast speed. He wondered if he was hallucinating because of his exhaustion from the battle. The North Sea King hurriedly bit the tip of his tongue and forced himself to open his eyes wide. Chapter 449. Sixth-tier Martial King Realm. After being stunned for a while, the Lord of North Sea suddenly realized why the flood dragon had acted so abnormally during the battle and rushed back to its nest. At that time, the Lord of North Sea thought that the flood dragon couldn't defeat him and became timid. Now it seemed that the flood dragon was not timid at all. Its nest had been robbed, and it wanted to go back to put out the fire. He didn't know that he had helped the thief and risked his life to stall the flood dragon. Looking at the cold pond that was no longer emitting cold chi, the Lord of North Sea immediately understood. Needless to say, the thief in front of him must have stolen the treasure from the cold pond while he was fighting the flood dragon. The Lord of North Sea was so angry that his hair was standing on end. He chased after Yi Fei. The terrifying killing intent of the 10th-tier Martial King Realm was like a surging wave, mercilessly crushing toward Yi Fei. "How dare you, thief! Stop right there and die! Get lost!" Yi Fei's reply was just one word. He regretted swallowing the cold ice fruit. Now his body was not only filled with spiritual qi, but also a terrifying cold qi. It was also this cold qi that made it difficult for Yi Fei to run. Even his words were trembling. As Yi Fei spoke, the cold qi turned into a cold wind, whistling and sweeping toward the Lord of North Sea. The king of Beihai's eyes widened in shock. What kind of treasure is that? Just the cold air it exhales is so terrifying. Did that brat swallow the treasure? You damned thief, give me your life. Roar. But before the furious Lord of North Sea could catch up to Yi Fei, the flood dragon in the sky, which had been heavily injured by the sword intent of the waves, suddenly went berserk when it sensed the cold qi exhaled by Yi Fei. Yi Fei and the Lord of North Sea didn't know that the body of the frost dragon in the cold pond was actually the flood dragon's ancestor. In the end, due to the change in the laws of the Tianwu continent, it failed to transform into a dragon and was trapped here. However, it still left behind some descendants to protect its corpse. At the same time, he also hoped that there would be a flood dragon in the future who could refine its cold air and walk on the path of becoming a dragon again. Yi Fei also did not know that the remaining blood energy of the frost dragon in the cold pond was specially prepared for its descendants to transform into dragons. In the end, it was absorbed by the blood bodhi, causing it to mutate. Sensing that its dragon transformation blood essence had been snatched away, the struggling flood dragon in the sky was so angered by Yi Fei that it spat out a flood dragon's blood essence. If an adventuring cultivator were to obtain it, they would definitely make a fortune. Then, a terrifying dragon might completely shatter the Lord of Beihai's sword will of billows. The flood dragon chased after the Lord of Beihai and Yi Fei at the same time. Roar! The huge dragon's breath hit the ground, and the ground within a kilometer immediately turned into a world of ice and snow. It also greatly affected the North Sea King and Yi Fei's escape. What's going on? I've already seriously injured this evil dragon, but it still has such combat strength. Oh no, that's berserk. The North Sea King turned his head in shock. He saw the flood dragon's blood-red eyes and the burning flood dragon's blood essence on its body. Berserk? Oh no. It can even trigger 1,000th of the vicious beast berserk. It seems that the flood dragon is really going to explode. Yi Fei also turned his head and was shocked. All vicious beasts could go berserk, but the chances were very small. However, once a vicious beast successfully went berserk, their strength would immediately increase by 1 to 10 times. Seeing the Lord of Beihai chasing after him, Yi Fei was still confident that he could kill the Lord of Beihai by surprise with the help of the Phoenix Bloodsword. But after seeing the flood dragon go berserk, its strength was infinitely close to the titled Wu Jun. Yi Fei immediately changed his mind. I'm surrounded by cold air now. I only have one chance to use the Phoenix Bloodsword. Even if I kill the Lord of Beihai, the flood dragon behind me will definitely kill me. I'd better escape quickly and deal with the cold air in my body first. Greater Void Step. Boom! Yi Fei tore open the void with his bare hands and went in. Seeing this, the Lord of Beihai was so angry that his eyes were bloodshot. He roared, "Thief, where are you going? Give me back my treasure. Get lost." Yi Fei replied to the Lord of Beihai with a middle finger. Before he went into the void, Yi Fei thought for a moment and took out an amulet. Speaking of this amulet, Yi Fei had looted it from the little girl when he looted Shanglaw. He hadn't had a chance to use it since then. Now that he was surrounded by cold air, Yi Fei didn't dare to consume too much of his vital essence. He simply threw the amulet behind him. Boom! After all, this amulet was made by the mad Lord Shang. Even if it couldn't kill the Lord of Beihai, it still made the Lord of Beihai, who was trying to stop Yi Fei from leaving, take a dozen steps back. The dozen steps back made the ferocious look on the Lord of Beihai's face turn into deep fear. He roared, "Thief, if I don't die, I'll kill your whole family." With that, the Lord of Beihai didn't even care about Yi Fei, who was running away. He angrily stimulated all his potential and wanted to escape. Unfortunately, the Lord of Beihai didn't have Yi Fei's Greater Void Step. He could enter the void at any time and escape from a long distance. Instead, he was forced back a dozen steps by Yi Fei. In a battle between experts, sometimes a short pause could decide the outcome of the battle, let alone taking a step back. Roar! The violent flood dragon swooped down from the sky and smashed the Lord of Beihai, who was resisting, into pieces with its dragon claws. Then it swallowed him into its stomach. Looking at Yi Fei again, the flood dragon couldn't find any trace of Yi Fei. The flood dragon thought of the blood essence it had guarded for thousands of years being stolen. It had only eaten a warrior at the 10th level of the Martial King realm. It was such a great loss. Even though it was still in a rage, the flood dragon was so angry that it spat out several mouthfuls of blood essence. In the end, the furious flood dragon rushed toward the Beihai Pass with hatred. If it remembered correctly, the human who provoked it called himself the Lord of Beihai. Needless to say, the thief who stole the blood essence of its ancestor must also be in the Lord of Beihai's mansion. Roar! Not long after, a violent flood dragon whose strength was infinitely close to that of a titled warrior, Wu Jun, rushed to the Lord of Beihai's mansion in a rage, ready to take revenge. At the moment, Yi Fei didn't know that his unintentional action had led to the destruction of the entire Lord of Beihai's mansion. He used the Great Void technique to escape tens of thousands of miles away. After making sure that he was out of the sphere of influence of the Lord of Beihai's mansion and that the violent flood dragon didn't chase after him, Yi Fei hurriedly found a cave and kicked out a white tiger vicious beast that were playing inside. Yi Fei immediately began closed-door cultivation, ready to refine the increasingly terrible cold air in his body. It's so cold, so cold. Although the cold ice fruit helped me break through the 6th level of the Martial King realm, it has frozen most of my tendons and meridians. I won't freeze to death, will I? Yi Fei shivered all over and hurriedly activated the Devil Emperor's Sutra to cultivate. Chapter 450. Heavenly King City Yi Fei had spent 2 whole months in seclusion. The white tiger statue outside had already thawed and was jumping around again. In the end, not only did Yi Fei fail to refine the frost in his body, he even froze half of the cave, including himself. Perhaps it felt that the terrifying human had probably died from chi deviation. Not only did the white tiger not move its nest, it even moved back into the cave. It even secretly used the cold air emitted by Yi Fei to cultivate. After all, the chilling ice fruit that Yi Fei had swallowed was not something ordinary. It was the purest blood essence of a frost dragon when it transformed into a dragon. Any dragon that could transform into a dragon would have at least reached the heavenly Grandmaster Sage realm, which was the peak of the 12th layer Martial Saint realm. Even though the frost dragon had been dead for thousands of years, the power contained in its blood essence was not something that Yi Fei, who was only at the 5th layer Martial King realm, could easily absorb. Even though Yi Fei had luckily broken through the bottleneck with the help of the chilling ice fruit and reached the 6th layer Martial King realm, he still could not deal with the terrifying frost in his body. The only thing he could do was to use the advantage of the Devil Emperor Scripture's powerful true essence to suppress the frost and compress it into his dantian. Initially, he had hoped to absorb the frost with the Immortal Sword Soul, but the Immortal Sword Soul did not care about it all. Even the Phoenix Blood Sword's extraterrestrial divine flame could not suppress the frost in his body. After cultivating for 2 whole months, he had been frozen for 2 whole months. That feeling, I didn't expect the frost of the chilling ice fruit to be so terrifying. The Immortal Sword Soul did not want to absorb it, and the extraterrestrial divine flame did not want to absorb it. What should I do? I can't just stay frozen here forever. Yi Fei opened his eyes and looked outside the ice wall at the white tiger that was comfortably absorbing the cold energy. He saw that the white tiger's strength had increased rapidly after 2 months of absorbing the cold energy. It was already on the verge of breaking through to the martial honorable realm from the vicious beasts of the martial ancestor realm. That's strange. I'm freezing to death after absorbing the frost chi. What's up with this white tiger? Yi Fei couldn't help but observe the white tiger's behavior carefully. He realized that every time the white tiger could no longer stand the cold, it would run to the side and eat some fire attribute spirit fruits. Yi Fei couldn't help but think, that's right, water and fire counter each other. How could I be so stupid? The divine flame from beyond the heavens couldn't do anything to the cold qi in my body. If I could find a fire attribute spirit fruit that could match the cold qi in my body, then maybe I could neutralize this cold qi. After understanding this point, Yi Fei didn't intend to continue cultivating. With a boom, he shattered the layer of ice and walked out. He didn't care about the white tiger that was trembling in fear in the corner of the cave. Yi Fei immediately used the Great Void Steps and left the cave. In the following month, Yi Fei suppressed the cold qi while searching for powerful fire attribute spirit fruits. Unfortunately, he didn't find anything. Fire attribute spirit fruit? The fire attribute spirit energy it contains is still too little. It can't neutralize the cold qi in my body. On a hot day, Yi Fei wore a thick cotton-padded jacket and shivered as he walked through a warrior's trading market. This was the Heavenly King City, an important city in the Northern Ocean country. There were a total of 4 such cities in the Northern Ocean country. They were respectively guarded by the 4 heavenly kings of the north, south, east, and west. Every heavenly king was known as the invincible martial king. Above the heavenly king was the king of the Northern Ocean country, who was titled Wu Jun. Yi Fei had heard about this and came to the Northern Heavenly King City to try his luck. He wanted to see if he could find a treasure that could neutralize the cold qi in his body. However, to his disappointment, even the fire attribute spirit fruit, which was known to have the strongest fire attribute spirit energy, Yi Fei felt that it was still far from what he wanted. Come, this is a freshly made treasure. It's definitely the inner core of a Wu Jun level vicious beasts. It's a fair trade. You can have it for only 10,000 spiritual crystals. Yi Fei walked around the market, looking for spirit fruits with fire attribute spirit energy. Suddenly, he heard a loud shout from a remote stall. The stall owner was a dark-faced man with a cunning look in his eyes. He was already a rank 10 martial honorable. Although he wasn't the best in the Heavenly King City, he was still considered an expert. Many warriors who were strolling around were tempted when they heard such an expert hawking. The inner core of a Wu Jun level vicious beasts. Is it true? Bullshaster's T, I know that guy. He came here 3 months ago and sold it for 10,000 Xian crystals for a piece of lousy stone. It sounds good, but whoever buys it is a fool. That's right. I heard that not long ago, young Master Nyo of the Nyo family was almost fooled. Fortunately, he realized it in time and beat this guy up. How dare he come here to cheat people? What, the Nyo family? It must be true. This thing must be a scam. I knew it. How could the inner core of a Wu Jun level vicious beast be sold at such a low price? The surrounding cultivators discussed animatedly, then gradually dispersed. Many people even cast incomparably disdainful gazes at the stall owner. You're even selling a broken stone as a martial lord's orb? I think you're a scammer. Hearing this, the stall owner became anxious and hurried to explain. Guys, don't go. If 10,000 is not enough, 5,000 will do. This stone, no, the inner core of a vicious beast is passed down from my ancestors. My ancestors once had a master of the 10th martial king realm. My grandfather told me in person that this might be the inner core of a Wu Jun level vicious beast, might? The disdainful look became more and more disdainful. The stall owner then realized that he had accidentally let it slip. However, this thing was indeed stolen from a cave of a Wu Jun level vicious beast by his ancestors. As for whether it was the inner core of a Wu Jun level, even Rinzhu had not figured it out, let alone the stall owner. Otherwise, he would not have sold it at such a low price. But no matter what the stall owner said, the warriors nearby did not buy it. The stall owner smiled bitterly and was about to pack up. At this time, a voice stopped him. How much is this stone? Of course, it was Yi Fei. Like the others, he did not care much about this stone. He just smiled and was about to leave. But when Yi Fei was about to turn around, he suddenly found that his trembling body miraculously stopped when he approached the stone. This was not a normal phenomenon. Yi Fei immediately realized that this stone might not be simple. He could afford 10,000 Xian crystals, so he decided to buy it. What stone? This is the inner core of a Wu Jun-level vicious beast. The stall owner was very unhappy with Yi Fei's slander of his family heirloom, but it was rare to meet someone who was interested in buying it. The stall owner immediately put on a smile and said, "Hey, brother, if you want to buy it, how about 3,000 Xian crystals?" 3,000. Yi Fei was stunned. Didn't he just offer 5,000 Xian crystals? The stall owner misunderstood. He thought that 3,000 Xian crystals was too expensive for Yi Fei. But the reputation of this thing had been spread out. Except for Yi Fei, no one would buy it. The stall owner immediately said with a painful expression, 2,000. What? 2,000 Xian crystals again? Yi Fei raised his eyebrows. The stall owner almost sat on the ground and cried bitterly. My brother, you think 2,000 Xian crystals is too expensive? Fine, I'm scared of you. 1,000 Xian crystals. I really can't go any lower. You have to let me make some money. Chapter 451. Collusion. Before he could even open his mouth to haggle, the stall owner was the one who kept on lowering the price. If not for the fact that Yi Fei felt that it was able to suppress the frost aura in his body, he would have doubted that this was a scam just like everyone else. Hearing that someone actually wanted to buy the stone, the nearby warriors gathered around out of curiosity. Even though the stall owner had lowered the price to 1,000, no one looked at the stone. Hearing that Yi Fei had the intention to buy it, some kind-hearted warriors even tried to persuade him. Young man, don't listen to his nonsense. How can a stone be sold for 1,000? Why don't you go rob a bank? Don't mention 1,000. I wouldn't even want it for free. The stall owner panicked when he saw that the buyer he had worked so hard to buy was about to turn down the offer. Who knew if anyone would be willing to buy his lousy stone if he missed out on Yi Fei? Immediately, the stall owner decided to cut off all means of retreat. He acted as if he was about to jump off a building and vomit blood. He said loudly, "Stop talking. 100 spiritual crystals. I really can't go any lower. Young hero, you have good taste. It's only 100 spiritual crystals. You should buy it." The stall owner was about to cry when he thought about how his ancestor had risked his life to steal an item only to sell it for 100 spiritual crystals. Yi Fei paused and didn't say anything else. He happily took out 100 spiritual crystals on the spot and handed it to the stall owner. All right, 100 it is. Let's make things clear first. After you pay, this stone belongs to me. Don't regret it. Brother, don't worry. I definitely won't regret it. Everyone can be my witness. The stall owner answered without hesitation. After all, he had already planned to find a place where there was no one around and throw the broken stone away after closing the stall. Let alone 100 spirit crystals, even if it was just one spirit crystal, he would still make a profit. The stall owner was afraid that Yi Fei would regret it. As he snatched the spiritual crystals, he quickly stuffed the stone into Yi Fei's hands. Sigh. Seeing that Yi Fei actually bought that lousy stone, the surrounding crowd sighed in disappointment. Then, they looked at Yi Fei as if they were looking at a fool. Ha! Look at that idiot from the North Sea. He spent 100 spirit crystals on a piece of broken stone. A country bumpkin will always be a country bumpkin. Shoo, keep your voice down. Can't you see that he's a first-layer Martial King realm expert? If you anger him, do you think you'll still be alive? What's there to be afraid of? This is Heavenly King City, a place with rules. Who dares to cause trouble in Heavenly King City? Do you think the Heavenly Prison is a joke? These martial artists clearly knew of Yi Fei's strength, yet they were not afraid. They even pointed at Yi Fei. After all, a powerful country like the Northern Ocean was different from small countries like the 18 Northern Seas. In the North Sea, martial artists were the most powerful forces. The royal family was just like a puppet. However, the situation was reversed in the Northern Ocean Kingdom. Since the king of the Northern Ocean Kingdom was Wu Jun, the power of the royal family was naturally above that of the sacred grounds and martial artists. Even if a martial artist broke the law, he would still be arrested and punished. Due to the power of the royal family and the reputation of the four heavenly kings, no martial artist dared to cause trouble in Heavenly King City. Hearing the discussion of these martial artists, Yifei did not care. When he received the stone, his face was filled with a strange expression. This stone can actually suppress the cold qi in my body. Could it be that I've found a treasure this time? Yifei weighed the stone in his hand and was about to put it away. At this moment, a commotion suddenly came from behind the crowd of onlookers. Then a young man shouted, panting, "Hey, black-faced stall owner, are you still selling the stone you sold last time? I'll buy it for 10,000 spiritual crystals." "What 10,000? The stall owner, who was about to close the stall happily with 100 spiritual crystals, was shocked. Isn't that young Master Nyo? Didn't young Master Nyo say that he was tricked last time and even beat up the stall owner? Why is he buying it now?" The surrounding martial artists were very surprised. Fierce Nyo, who had rushed over, was also very depressed. After he beat up the stall owner last time, he could not hold back his curiosity and told the elders about it. In the end, it attracted the attention of the elders, and they kept asking him for a long time. At this moment, no matter how stupid Fierce Neo was, he knew that the broken stone might really be the inner core of a Wu Jun level vicious beast. The tragedy was that he actually missed it. Since then, the Neo family had specially sent people to keep an eye on the stall owner. They were waiting for the stall owner to appear again so that they could coerce him to buy the item. When young Master Neo received the news, he didn't even bother with the courtesans. He threw away the beauties on him and rushed over like he was flying. He rushed to the stall owner's side and urged loudly, "What are you standing there for? Hurry up and sell that stone to me. 10,000 spirit crystals. I won't give you any less." Hearing this, the stall owner suddenly regretted. How could he be so stupid as to sell the stone to Yi Fei for only 100 spiritual crystals? However, with so many people watching, the stall owner could not deny it even if he wanted to. He could only point at Yi Fei gloomily and say, "Young Master Nyo, that stone, I've already sold it to this young hero." "What? You actually sold it?" Fierce Neo was very surprised. Only now did he notice Yi Fei holding the stone. Fierce Neo's eyes lit up as he quickly walked over and said, "Brother, I'm Fierce Neo from the Neo family. This stone was chosen by one of the elders of the Neo family. Brother, please do the Neo family some face and sell it to me for 100,000 spiritual crystals." Considering that Yi Fei was a LV1 martial king, Fierce Neo could not force him. He could only tempt him with money. The martial artists who heard this were all extremely shocked. What? 100,000 spiritual crystals? That stupid stone is worth so much. After recovering from the shock, everyone looked at Yi Fei with envy. At the same time, they looked at the stall owner as if they were looking at a fool. This guy actually sold a treasure worth 100,000 spiritual crystals for 100 spiritual crystals. He was really a weirdo. The stall owner was so heartbroken that he wanted to bang his head on the ground and die. At this moment, even a fool would know that it was not a stupid stone, but a real treasure. "Sorry, I'm not buying it." Ignoring Fierce Neo's offer, the Neo family knew that it was a treasure. Of course, Yi Fei also knew that this stone was a treasure that could suppress the cold qi in his body. This was exactly what Yi Fei needed the most. Ever since the cold qi had appeared in his body, Yi Fei was forced to use 90% of his strength to suppress the cold qi in his body. The strength that he could display was only at LV1 Martial King. This was no doubt a very dangerous thing. Now that he had finally found a way to suppress the cold qi, he would not sell it even if it was 1,000,000 spiritual crystals, let alone 100,000 spiritual crystals. Holding the stone, Yi Fei turned around and walked away. Fierce Neo's face instantly turned ugly. In Heavenly King City, there was actually someone who dared to not give face to the Neo family. This was ridiculous. "Stop right there. You want to fight with me?" Yi Fei frowned and looked at Fierce Neo, who was blocking him. Fierce Neo was only a LV10 martial honorable. He could slap this person to death with one hand. Let's fight." "Kid, so you're a country bumpkin from the North Sea. No wonder you don't know the rules of Heavenly King City. Here, Martial artists who break the law are treated the same as commoners. Brothers, I suspect that this person is a spy from an enemy country. Please bring him to the heavenly prison and investigate carefully. Chapter 452. Threat. The two officers were guards of Heavenly King City. They weren't strong and were only in the third or fifth layer of the martial honored realm. However, they weren't afraid of Yi Fei, who was in the first layer of the martial king realm. Niu Ming whispered a few words into the ear of one of the officers. The officer nodded his head and stared coldly at Yi Fei. Insolent spy, how dare you behave so atrociously in our Heavenly King City? Where are you from? Where are you going? Who are you hiding behind you? You better tell us the truth. Is this all you've got? I didn't want to sell the stone, and you ordered these officers to snatch it from me? Yi Fei ignored the two officers and sneered at Niu Ming. That was Niu Ming's plan, but he refused to admit it. That would make it seem like the Niu family was bullying others. At the same time, Niu Ming had bribed these two officers in advance so that they could accuse the stall owner of being a spy when he failed to buy the stone. He would then send the stall owner to prison to deal with him slowly. Even though the stone was in Yi Fei's hands and he couldn't buy it from him, Niu Ming still decided to stick to his original plan and snatch it from him. He snorted and signaled the two officers to take action. Niu Ming sneered and walked out of the crowd with his lackeys. When the two officers saw that Yi Fei dared to ignore them, they couldn't take it anymore. The moment Niu Ming left, they immediately flared up. Insolent spy, we are asking you a question. Why aren't you telling us the truth? Do you have an accomplice? The two officers were rather careful. When they realized that Yi Fei was in the first layer of the martial king realm, they decided to find out if Yi Fei had any backing. Don't worry, I don't have an accomplice, and I'm not a spy. Yi Fei looked at the two officers mockingly. How could he not know that the two of them were jackals of the same tribe? No matter what he said, the two of them would definitely find a way to accuse him. As expected, the two bailiffs looked at each other when they heard that Yi Fei had no backing and was a foreigner who came alone. They looked at each other with relieved expressions. When they looked at Yi Fei again, their gazes became playful. How dare you? If you say you're not a spy, then you're not a spy. Who's the official or you? Remember, if we say you're a spy, then you're a spy. What's wrong? You're not convinced? Do you think that you're amazing just because you're a first-layer martial king? Let me tell you, this is the Heavenly King City, beneath the feet of the Northern Heavenly King. Even if you're a dragon, you'll still have to submit. You'd best not try to resist. The two Yamen runners looked at Yi Fei cautiously. Yi Fei found it funny. He understood that these two were just cowards who bullied the weak and feared the strong. However, they were right. This was not the North Sea, where sex and sacred grounds could suppress the royal family. In a strong country like the Northern Ocean country, both sex and sacred grounds depended on the royal family. They had to act according to the Northern Ocean King's wishes. Yi Fei's body was now filled with cold qi. He could not even use 10% of his combat strength. Suddenly, Yi Fei had an idea. He thought to himself, why don't I just let them stay in the heavenly prison? That place is relatively safe. It's enough for me to slowly study the method to remove the cold qi in my body. Seeing that Yi Fei did not speak or resist, the two Yamen runners did not continue to make things difficult for Yi Fei. Instead, they waved at Yi Fei with ugly expressions and said, "Come with us to the heavenly prison. Don't worry. We'll let you go once we find out that you're not a spy. Of course, if there's someone here who can prove your innocence, we'll let you go immediately." The two Yamen runners said loudly on purpose and looked around with sharp eyes. The surrounding martialists lowered their heads. They were no fools. They knew that Yi Fei had offended Niu Ming and that Niu Ming wanted to take revenge on Yi Fei. The Niu family was also a first-rate family clan in the Heavenly Sky City. No one would stand up for a stranger whom they didn't even know the name of. These people's reactions were also within the expectations of the two Yamen runners. On the spot, the two of them escorted Yi Fei to the imperial prison. When Yi Fei arrived at the entrance of the heavenly prison, he saw Niu Ming waiting for him with a group of followers. Without any outsiders, Niu Ming did not need to pretend to be a good person. He stared at Yi Fei and threatened. Boy, you're smart enough to know that the Northern Heavenly King City is not a place where you can behave atrociously. How about this? If you give me the stone, I'll reconcile with you and make friends with you. What do you think? If you like me, you can make friends with me. If you don't, you can frame me and send me to the heavenly prison. I can't afford to make friends with you, and I don't dare to make friends with you. Yi Fei said coldly as he shook his head. So, you're not going to give me the stone? Niu Ming's expression was extremely ugly. In the heavenly sky city, there were very few people who dared to disrespect the Niu family. Get lost. Yi Fei spat out this word coldly. He turned around and strode into the heavenly prison. After entering the heavenly prison, he felt that there was a shocking array in the heavenly prison. It ensured that even a martial king realm 10th layer would not be able to escape from the heavenly prison. He could not help but nod in his heart. The heavenly prison was not bad. It had a strong defense, and there was no need to worry about enemies breaking in. It was the best place to heal and break through. Yi Fei did not stand on ceremony. He allowed the Yamen runners to put on the special shackles that sealed a cultivator's quintessence. Then, he impatiently said to the two Yamen runners escorting him, "Brothers, please move faster." "That's right. Can I have a single room?" Hearing Yi Fei's request, the two guards were speechless. In the past, when they captured martial artists, they either cried for their parents or hung their heads in dejection. It was the first time they met someone like Yi Fei, who was in such a hurry to enter the heavenly prison. Cut the crap. If you dare to cause trouble in the heavenly prison, you will die even if you are a martial king realm expert. Brother, you are unlucky. You offended the Niu clan. Let me give you a piece of advice. If the Niu clan wants something from you, you better hand it over. Otherwise, you will suffer here for dozens of days. The two guards pulled a long face. Considering Yi Fei's martial king realm strength, they still brought Yi Fei to the single room for prisoners and left. Young Master Niu, the kid inside is very stubborn. We have conveyed your message, but it seems that he does not want to hand over the treasure you want. The two guards went back to look for Niu Ming. I gave him a chance, but this country bumpkin does not know what is good for him. Then, don't blame me for being ruthless. A cold light flashed in Niu Ming's eyes when he heard that Yi Fei still did not want to hand over the stone. Brothers Chai, please help me force that brat a bit more. Niu Ming took out two bulging space bags, but the two guards did not take them. They seemed to be in a difficult position. Young Master Niu, look at the kid's clothes. He seems to be from the Taishian holy ground. If something big happens and the Northern Heavenly King investigates, it will be difficult for us to explain. F*CK, bullshit holy ground. It is just a country bumpkin. Other than Nan Ruofeng, there are no other geniuses in the North Sea. What harm is there in killing him? Niu Ming's face was full of disdain. He clenched his teeth and took out two bigger and bulkier space bags. The two Yamen runners smiled and said, well said. Young Master Niu's business is our business. This kid is a martial king after all. It will be difficult to kill him, but we can still teach him a lesson and make him understand that he shouldn't go against young Master Niu. Haha, then I will wait for your good news, Niu Ming said happily. Chapter 453. Causing trouble, Niu Ming was having a beautiful dream outside. In a solitary cell, Yi Fei was shackled. When the bailiffs left, Yi Fei sneered. With a few cracking sounds, he tore apart the special shackles that were used to seal qi and casually threw them to the side. He picked up the strange stone and started to study it. An hour passed. Yi Fei did not find anything useful. Although he was quick-witted and had shocking comprehension, these were all martial arts. When it came to knowledge of the world's treasures, Yi Fei was lacking in knowledge. However, Yi Fei couldn't be blamed for this. After all, he was still young. He had just turned 20 years old. In the future, 20 years old was considered an adult. However, in the Timu continent, where people had a long lifespan, 20 years old was equivalent to a teenager. This broken stone is really strange. When I hold it, the cold qi in my body will not act up. This is undoubtedly a treasure. However, why can't I feel any spiritual energy fluctuations from this stone? Everything had a spirit, and treasures were even more so. The more powerful a treasure was, the stronger its resonance with spiritual energy would be. For example, this stone was obviously a treasure, but it did not have any spiritual energy. This was the first time Yi Fei had encountered something like this. Why don't I ask some seniors in the heavenly prison? This was another reason why Yi Fei was willing to enter the heavenly prison. As the saying goes, there is strength in numbers. There were many martial artists in the heavenly prison, and many of them were martial king experts. These people were old and experienced. They were knowledgeable and should be able to recognize the origin of this stone. Pung, pung, pung. Just as Yi Fei was thinking, the sound of bailiffs knocking on the metal door with water and fire batons came from outside. Yi Fei realized that he had been studying the stone in his hand for an entire day. It was already noon of the second day. It was lunchtime in the heavenly prison. Before the bailiffs arrived, Yi Fei hurriedly put the shackles back. To be honest, these shackles were useful to ordinary warriors, but to Yi Fei, they were completely useless. If he was happy, he would wear them. If he was unhappy, he would tear them apart and throw them aside. Brat, have you thought about what I told you yesterday? Two Yamen runners walked up to Yi Fei's cell, hinting at something. There's no need to think about it. I live and sleep well here. I even have free lunch to eat. It's very comfortable. Yi Fei ignored the two bailiffs and turned to follow the crowd to the dining area. The two bailiffs were so angry that their faces turned white. In the heavenly prison, they were the bosses. It was fine if a prisoner didn't curry favor with them, but he actually dared to act like a boss in front of them? It seems like this person won't learn his lesson until his head bleeds. Forget it. He became a martial king at such a young age. It's inevitable for him to be arrogant. Didn't he want to eat? Let's let him have a big meal today. Two Yamen runners winked at Yi Fei and the other prisoners with sinister smiles on their faces as they drove them to the dining area. The moment Yi Fei walked in, he attracted the attention of many prisoners. TSK, a martial king expert at such a young age. What did he do to be locked up in the heavenly prison? What else could it be? He offended young Master Niao. Let's back off and wait for a good show. Those who could be locked up in the heavenly prison were not easy to deal with. On the contrary, Yi Fei saw many warriors who practiced demonic techniques. They had sinister expressions as they stared at him with murderous gazes. These people better not provoke me. Otherwise, Yi Fei snorted coldly. He ignored the discussions of these people and walked to an empty seat alone to eat. This was his principle. If others didn't provoke him, he wouldn't provoke them. As long as these people didn't provoke Yi Fei couldn't be bothered to take the initiative to cause trouble. However, in a place like the heavenly prison, sometimes Yi Fei couldn't just stay out of trouble. Especially the two Yamen runners, who had received a lot of benefits from Niao Ming. When Yi Fei sat down, the two Yamen runners nodded subtly in the distance. Then, they gestured at Yi Fei with their lips. In the corner of the dining hall, a few fierce-looking warriors who looked like bandits were gathered. They all revealed sinister smiles. Damn, where did this kid come from? He looks so delicate. Xiao-san, go over there and ask him to kowtow a few times. At the same time, give me a massage on my shoulders. The one who spoke was a bald, muscular man. His arms were thicker than the thighs of other warriors. He was as majestic as a demonic bear. The one called Xiao-san was very skinny. Although he was skinny, he was still a first-layer martial king expert. However, in front of the muscular man, he nodded and bowed, constantly flattering. Yes, Brother Demonic Bear. Where did that kid get the good fortune to be able to massage Brother Demonic Bear's shoulders? I'm so envious. After flattering, he turned to Yi Fei with a cold look. He strode over and patted Yi Fei's shoulders. Kid, stop pretending to be deaf and dumb. Brother Demonic Bear asked you to massage his shoulders. Why are you still sitting there like a fool? All right, before you go, wipe my shoes clean. Bang! Xiao-san relied on Demonic Bear's sincere invitation and arrogantly put his feet on Yi Fei's table. Yi Fei couldn't be bothered to deal with this kind of person. Suddenly, he raised his hand and pretended to stretch. He swept his arm towards Xiao-san's skinny legs. Bang! Xiao-san lost his balance and fell on his back. causing a group of cultivators to mock him. However, after laughing, these people were secretly shocked by Yi Fei's courage. One must know that Demonic Bear was a 7th-layer martial king expert and was once a general of the Heavenly King's mansion. He was sent to the Heavenly Prison by the Northern Heavenly King because he killed innocent people. This was also the reason why no one dared to provoke Demonic Bear in the Heavenly Prison. Now, this newcomer actually kicked an iron plate on his first day. Many warriors had already stopped eating and left Yi Fei's side at the fastest speed possible. Yi Fei still had an indifferent expression on his face. He ate what he wanted to eat, drank what he wanted to drink, and ate with relish. Many warriors who were watching him were sweating profusely. Where did this hothead come from? He's about to die, yet he still has the mood to eat. Look, Demonic Bear is going over. Bang, bang, bang. Demonic Bear had received benefits from the bailiffs and decided to teach Yi Fei a lesson. At this moment, Yi Fei openly challenged his authority in the Heavenly Prison, completely infuriating Demonic Bear. Demonic Bear walked over to Yi Fei with trembling footsteps. Without saying a word, he spat a mouthful of saliva into Yi Fei's plate. Then, he grabbed a handful of soil and threw it in as well. Brat, you like to eat, right? If you eat this today, I'll let you go. Otherwise, my ass. Bang! Yi Fei only wanted to have a quiet meal, yet someone came to cause trouble. He was already in a bad mood, and now, he was in an extremely bad mood. Before Demonic Bear finished speaking, Yi Fei suddenly grabbed the plate on the table and smashed it on Demonic Bear's head. Chapter 454. Deterrence. Demonic Bear was disgusted. He had spat a mouthful of saliva into the food and even threw some dirt into it. When the Demonic Bear opened its mouth, a lot of food was forced into its mouth. When it tasted the sticky and stinky food in its mouth, even though it was a Martial King Realm LV7 expert, the Demonic Bear was disgusted. It turned its head and began to vomit on the ground. When he looked at Yi Fei again, it was as if he had done something insignificant. He clapped his hands, turned around, and calmly walked back to his cell. Seeing Yi Fei's actions, the guards and prisoners who were watching the show were all shocked. It can't be. This newcomer is ruthless. He is only a rank 1 Martial King, and he dares to provoke Demonic Bear, a rank 7 Martial King. He even slapped him in the face. He is indeed ruthless. It's a pity that he offended Demonic Bear. He might even be beaten to death by the furious Demonic Bear. Let's quickly retreat further away. This time, if we're not careful, someone might die. As the Yamen runners and warriors discussed, they retreated a few dozen steps as fast as they could. More than a dozen of Demon Bear's subordinates surrounded Yi Fei as fast as they could, their faces ferocious. Brat, stop. You want to leave after beating someone up? Do you want to die? Don't waste your breath on him. Let's charge forward and beat him to death to vent General Demonic Bear's anger. Those who were able to hang out with Demonic Bear were not easy to deal with. The weakest of them was a rank 10 Martial Honorable. Even if they were locked up in the Heavenly Prison and their true essence was restricted, their destructive power was still very shocking. However, compared to letting his subordinates beat Yi Fei to death, Demonic Bear, who felt that his body and soul were both damaged at the same time, wanted to personally torture Yi Fei to death. Get out of my way. How dare you sneak attack me? Even if I beat you to death today, the Northern Heavenly King can't blame me. Demonic Bear angrily pushed away his subordinates. His large hand had shocking pressure as it grabbed Yi Fei's shoulder. Then, he exerted force with his fingers and was about to crush Yi Fei's shoulder. He pressed down with his palm and wanted to force Yi Fei to kneel in front of him. Kneel down. Boom! The entire ground shook violently when Demonic Bear attacked. From this, it could be seen how terrifying his physical strength was. Feeling the pressure on his shoulder, Yi Fei frowned. Then he shook his head and said, 7th level Martial King Realm, your physical strength is only SOSO. You, how is this possible? Demonic Bear's face was covered in sweat. The veins on his thick arms were bulging. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't crush Yi Fei's shoulder or make Yi Fei kneel. In his panic, demonic bear hurriedly stretched out another hand. With a sinister smile, he prepared to use another hand to make Yi-Fei submit. Kneel! Rumble! There was another loud roar, followed by the demonic bear's miserable shriek. Yi-Fei also used one hand to heavily slap the demonic bear's shoulder. Half of the demonic bear's body had already been smashed into the ground. Its entire shoulder had already been shattered into pieces. Even so, Yi-Fei didn't plan to let him go. Thinking of a disgusting scene of demonic bear spitting on the plate, Yi-Fei's eyes turned cold. The moment demonic bear was pressed into the ground, his knees shot out like a cannonball. Bang! Demonic bear's shriek stopped abruptly. His entire face was dented and deformed by Yi-Fei's knee. His cumbersome body flew backward, creating a deep trench in the ground. Get lost. Whoever dares to provoke me will be punished by this person. Yi-Fei couldn't be bothered with a group of servants and bailiffs who were scared out of their wits. He walked back to the prison cell and continued to study the strange stone. Hiss! After Yi-Fei left, the entire cafeteria became extremely quiet. It wasn't until more than a minute later that someone let out a frightened gasp. Oh my God, who is that kid? He's only a first-layer Martial King. He actually knocked Demonic Bear, a seventh-layer Martial King, unconscious with one move. Sigh, there's nothing we can do about it. This is the heavenly prison, and our Jun Yuan is restricted. All we can rely on is our own physique. Consider this demonic bear's bad luck. Of all the people he could have provoked, he just had to provoke a super genius with a powerful physique. The prisoners discussed animatedly as they looked at Yi-Fei's back in fear. Then, they carefully returned to their respective cells. They understood that from today onwards, Demonic Bear's era was over. The era that belonged to Yi-Fei had arrived. The two bailiffs who had received benefits from Yo Ming looked even worse. They stared at the unconscious demonic bear on the ground with a trace of fear in their eyes. I didn't expect that kid to be so powerful. Even General Demonic Bear was no match for him. It won't be easy for the Nyo family to earn money this time. Even if it's not easy, we still have to earn it. We've already offended this kid. How can we offend the Nyo family as well? So what if he has a strong physique? There's still one person in the heavenly prison who can definitely take care of him. You mean the felon locked in the depths of the heavenly prison? He's an ancestor that we can't afford to offend. With his strength, he can break out of the heavenly prison at any time. He's only staying here because he's worried about the northern heavenly king. Do you think he'll listen to our orders? One of the bailiffs hesitated. The other one sneered in disdain. Humph! A dragon doesn't live with a snake. That old man said that he won't allow anyone to live with him. Even if he doesn't listen to our orders, if we directly send this kid to his cell, you're really cunning, kid. The two bailiffs hid at the side and discussed for a long time. Both of them smiled as if they had succeeded in their scheme. Then, they immediately went to prepare. Due to the ruthless attack at noon, Yi-Fei could clearly feel the difference in the attitude of these prisoners when it was time for lunch the next day. No one dared to be the first to go to the place where they could get their food. It was only when Yi-Fei walked over that many Martial King prisoners greeted him respectfully with smiles on their faces. Big brother, you're here. Big brother, you're here. We haven't even started eating yet. We've been waiting for you. Hello, big brother. This is a shui ling fruit that I obtained during my training. It tastes very good. I'm unlucky and don't have the right to enjoy it. If big brother likes it, feel free to take it. Even the demonic bear that was beaten up had a fierce look on its face when it saw Yi-Fei coming over. However, as soon as Yi-Fei looked at it, the fierce look on the demonic bear's face turned into fear. It didn't even have the courage to raise its head and look at Yi-Fei. It only focused on eating. Yi-Fei was secretly amused when he saw this. He felt that in the heavenly prison, the one with the bigger fist was the boss. If he had been just a little bit weaker yesterday, the outcome would have been different. Therefore, for the next 10 days, Yi-Fei's days in the heavenly prison were very comfortable. The only thing that made him depressed was that even after so many days, he still couldn't figure out what the stone in his hand was. On the 11th day, the door of the cell suddenly opened. Two bailiffs walked in with cold faces and instructed expressionlessly. Kid, your cell is still a little small. Come with us. We're in a good mood today, so we'll give you a bigger and more comfortable cell. Why aren't you thanking us?" The two bailiffs rubbed their fingers, indicating that they still wanted more benefits. Yi Fei didn't even look at them. He walked out without looking back and said, "You two dog slaves, hurry up and lead the way." Chapter 455. A dragon does not live with a snake. Not only did they fail to get what they wanted, they were also scolded as slaves. The two guards were so angry that they were about to go berserk. However, considering Yi Fei's strong physical body, they could not teach Yi Fei a lesson even if they wanted to. They could only suppress their anger and escort Yi Fei to a special cell. This cell was indeed big enough. It was estimated to be the size of 3 single cells. However, when Yi Fei came over, he saw that there was someone sitting cross-legged inside. Yi Fei was not happy. "You two slaves, didn't you say that you would give me a bigger single cell? Why is there another person inside?" He asked while knowing the answer. The two Yamen runners' faces were also cold. They were too lazy to say anything. They directly opened the cell door and pushed Yi Fei in. With a bang, the cell door was tightly shut. Then, the two of them exchanged a complacent look. This time that brat will suffer. I bet that in less than a day, that brat will be crippled by Master Long." "A day? You overestimate that person. Long Ying is a 9th-level Martial King expert. If he did not offend the Northern Heavenly King by accident, he would be able to do whatever he wanted in the entire Heavenly King city. A day? I think in 2 hours, that kid will cry for help from us." The two guards discussed and did not have the slightest intention of helping Yi Fei. They even hoped that Yi Fei would be beaten up as badly as possible. Only when Yi Fei was hurt and scared, they could successfully complete Niu Meng's task. Inside the cell, Long Ying, who was sitting cross-legged, opened his eyes when he sensed that someone had entered. He stared coldly at Yi Fei. "A 1st-level Martial King Jr.? Didn't I tell you that no one is allowed to disturb me? I'll give you 3 breaths to get out of here. I won't make things difficult for you." Bang! Long Ying did not even need to get up. The wind from his fist actually knocked down the cell door in front of him. Yi Fei was stunned. This old man's physical strength was truly terrifying. Originally, Yi Fei didn't want to cause trouble, but this old man kept telling people to get out, which made Yi Fei feel uncomfortable. "Old man, don't be so angry. Since he was already here, he might as well take things as they came." Yi Fei had no intention of retreating. In his heart, he also believed that this person was probably arranged by the two bailiffs to deal with him. Long Ying's expression turned ugly as he scolded, "Brat, I don't care who you've offended, but since ancient times, dragons don't coexist with snakes. I'll give you one last chance. Get out, don't be an eyesore." "That's right. I'm a dragon in the sky, and you're a bug on the ground. Now you can scram." Yi Fei sneered and mocked. Subconsciously, he still thought that this old man was either one of the two bailiffs or someone arranged by the Niu family to deal with him. Of course, he wouldn't be polite with his words. "How dare you, a junior of LV1 Martial King realm, talk to me like this? Very well, in that case, you don't have to scram. I'll cripple you and throw you out." Long Ying stood up angrily. His entire body was like a mad dragon, causing the ground of the celestial prison to tremble slightly. They finally started fighting. Let's see if that brat still dares to be so arrogant in the celestial prison. The two bailiffs felt the trembling of the ground and laughed sinisterly. Not only did they not stop it, but they also deliberately walked further away. In the cell, Yi Fei also stood up with a sneer when he saw that the old man finally couldn't help but attack. He said, "If a tiger doesn't show its power, you'll treat me as a sick cat. I hope you're ready to pay the price for being a dog." "What dog? Brat, how dare you be so presumptuous?" Long Ying was so angry that his eyes widened. His terrifying fist, with great pressure, smashed toward Yi Fei. "Good. Let's see whose fist is harder." Yi Fei growled. He didn't back down, even when facing an LV9 Martial King realm expert. After all, this was the celestial prison. In a situation where true Yuan couldn't be used, cultivators could only compete with their physical bodies. When it came to physical strength, Yifei was confident that he wouldn't lose to anyone. Boom! Their fists collided continuously, causing sparks to explode in the air. In the end, both of their fists landed on each other's body at the same time. Yifei felt a great force rushing toward him. His body couldn't help but fall back. Longing also let out a groan. His expression changed greatly as he retreated more than 10 steps, leaving deep footprints on ground. What a strong physical body! Yifei and Longing shouted at the same time. They looked at each other with grave expressions. After looking at each other for a while, a cold smile appeared on Longying's face. TSK. Junior, I really don't know if you're stupid or crazy. Without a special body constitution, you dare to walk the path of body cultivation, which is the most difficult path to cultivate. Old thing, don't look down on us ordinary cultivators. On the path of martial arts, talent is important, but a cultivator's will is more important. If I want to become stronger, the heavens and earth can't stop me. If God comes, I will destroy God. If Buddha comes, I will kill Buddha. Boom! Battle intent and killing intent appeared on Yifei's body. Yifei took a step forward and threw another punch at Longing. Junior, I think you are looking for a beating. Longing was enraged. He was a senior body cultivator and had a special body constitution. How could he be afraid of an ordinary cultivator like Yifei? He simply threw a punch at him. In an instant, the two of them exchanged blows in the cell. Basically, you punch me, I punch you back. The more they fought, the more frightened Yifei was. He had been on the path of martial arts for a long time, but he had never seen anyone who could compete with his battle demon golden body in terms of pure physical strength. Even Guman's barbarian body could not compare. The old man in front of him was indeed different. Because he specialized in body cultivation and had a special body constitution, his physical strength was not much weaker than Yifei's. Yifei, who was in high spirits, suddenly let out a long cry. His battle intent was completely aroused. Old man, your physical body is not bad. Let's decide the winner today. Junior, do you think I am afraid of you? Longing also shouted, but his voice was not as confident as Yifei's. In fact, Longing regretted fighting with Yifei. Just think about it. Yifei was only in the LV-1 Martial King realm, but his physical strength was even more terrifying than that of Longing, a senior body cultivator in the LV-9 Martial King realm. Such strength might not be considered much in a place like the Central Plains, where monstrous geniuses were numerous. However, in the northern region where martial arts had withered, the strength that Yifei displayed was definitely one of the top geniuses. Just think about it. Yifei's physical strength was already so terrifying at the LV-1 Martial King realm. If Yifei reached the LV-9 Martial King realm, he would probably be able to kill Longing with a single punch. After all, Longing was an experienced man. How could he provoke such a terrifying genius for no reason? After dozens of punches, seeing that Yifei was still as vigorous as before, Longing was depressed and decisively retreated. He shouted to stop. Junior, stop for a moment. I think there must be some misunderstanding between us. Misunderstanding my ass. If you want to fight, I will fight with you anytime. Yifei raised his fist and was about to continue. Longing was so angry that his beard was trembling. Chapter 456. Earthly Fire Inner Elixir. What do you mean? Weren't you ordered by the two bailiffs to teach me a lesson? Yifei wouldn't believe Longing's explanation so easily. Furthermore, it was rare to meet an expert whose physical body could match his. Yifei wanted to continue the fight to see whose physical body was stronger. Looking at Yifei, who was burning with fighting spirit, Longing couldn't help but sigh. He shook his head and sighed. Sigh. It seems that I'm really old. I've worked hard for 30 years, but I can't even compare to a junior like you who doesn't have a special body constitution. Perhaps, on the path of martial arts, one's willpower and determination are more important than one's talent. Facing Longing, who suddenly became dispirited, Yifei was too embarrassed to continue the fight, even if he wanted to. He also felt that Long Ying didn't seem to be lying. You really weren't sent by the two bailiffs or the Nyo clan to deal with me? Yi Fei asked again. Long Ying was stunned for a moment before he understood. He nodded and said, so you've offended the Nyo clan. No wonder the two bailiffs thought of using me to deal with you. Young man, don't worry. I'm not one of them. Furthermore, I've been locked up in the heavenly prison for at least 10 years. The Nyo clan doesn't have the right to order me around. Long Ying explained. Seeing that Yi Fei didn't intend to fight, he could finally breathe a sigh of relief. At the same time, he secretly wiped the cold sweat on his head. The fight just now seemed to be on par. However, Long Ying knew that if he continued to fight, he would be the one to lose. Hearing that Long Ying, a LV9 Martial King expert, had been locked up for 10 years, Yi Fei couldn't help but feel curious while feeling the power of the Northern Heavenly King. 10 years. Senior, what crime did you commit to be locked up for so long? With your strength, it shouldn't be difficult for you to escape, right? Haha, escape? It's not that easy. The four Heavenly Kings are all undefeatable martial kings, and the Northern Ocean King is Wu Jun. Even if I escape, I will still die. I might as well stay here and wait for the 10 years to pass before I can get out. As for what this old man did, it's not a big deal. It's just that back then, I traveled all over the place and was very competitive. I shouldn't have killed someone on the streets of Heavenly King City. Even though that person lied to me first, thinking that this old man couldn't recognize treasures, he didn't know that this old man is best at identifying treasures. When Long Ying talked about his past, a trace of nostalgia and pride flashed across his face. Yi Fei's eyes lit up when he heard this, and his attitude immediately changed. Old master, are you very good at identifying treasures? Of course. My family is a family of appraisers. Long Ying raised his head and said arrogantly. Then, Senior, please help me take a look and see what this thing is. Yi Fei's face lit up with joy, and he quickly took out the stone. After all, Yi Fei was still too inexperienced to recognize this kind of treasure. However, Long Ying in front of him looked like an experienced person. He could ask for advice. Long Ying was indeed from a family of appraisers. When he first saw the stone that Yi Fei took out, his face was full of disdain. However, this thing was taken out by Yi Fei, so he didn't dare to be negligent. He quickly used his family's special method to check it again. Then, Long Ying couldn't help but open his eyes wide. He looked at Yi Fei with extreme envy and said, Boy, you're in luck. If I'm not wrong, this should be the earth-fire internal elixir left behind by the Wu Jun level vicious beasts. Is it really the internal elixir of the Wu Jun level vicious beasts? Yi Fei was very surprised. No matter how he looked at it, this thing looked like a stone. It would make a hole in the ground if he picked it up. Was this thing also an internal elixir? This is definitely an earth-fire internal elixir. There's no mistake. The earth-fire internal elixir is different from other vicious beasts and demonic beasts. The earth-fire internal elixir is made up of soil and rocks. The internal elixir condensed by it will mutate due to it absorbing the earth-fire all year round. That's why it looks similar to a stone. There won't be any spiritual chi fluctuations. 10 martial artists will probably treat it as an ordinary stone. If I didn't have special methods, I would have misjudged it. Long Ying's attitude was very serious. He looked at Yi Fei with eyes full of envy. He finally understood why the Nyo family wanted to deal with Yi Fei. The internal elixir of the Wu Jun level vicious beasts, and it was a very special earth-fire internal elixir. This was no ordinary treasure. If anyone else had obtained it, they would have been overjoyed. Yi Fei's expression was still very calm. He continued to ask for guidance. Senior, how should I use this internal elixir? Swallow it. This thing was as hard as a stone. Yi Fei had the guts to swallow it, but he wouldn't be able to digest it. Hee. Long Ying smiled and pointed out, the earth-fire internal elixir isn't that easy to refine. You still have to find enough cold chi to restrain the earth fire. Only then can you balance the fire and water to refine the earth fire out. I see. No wonder the cold chi in my body stopped acting up after I obtained this earth fire internal elixir. Ha! Senior, look at the cold chi in my body. Can you refine this internal elixir? Yi Fei burst out laughing. After hearing Long Ying's explanation, he was sure that this earth-fire internal elixir was the best way to resolve the cold qi in his body. Yi Fei didn't hesitate. With a boom, he completely released the cold qi that he had been suppressing in his dantian. Immediately, the temperature of the prison dropped to the point where it was freezing. Long Ying's expression changed tremendously. He finally realized that he had underestimated Yi Fei's strength. This kid was not a first-layer martial emperor. He was clearly a sixth-layer martial emperor realm super genius. What was more terrifying was the cold qi in Yi Fei's body. As soon as it appeared, even a ninth-layer martial emperor realm Long Ying felt like his body was going to be frozen. However, Yi Fei was still able to resist the cold qi while jumping around. Sigh, is this the new generation surpasses the old? I'm really impressed this time. Long Ying didn't say anything. He automatically retreated to the outside of the prison cell, not daring to get any closer to Yi Fei. The cold qi emitted from Yi Fei's body was too shocking. As soon as the cold qi was unleashed, more than half of the prison cell was covered in frost. However, in the deepest part of the frost, Yi Fei sat cross-legged on the ice. The earth-fire internal elixir in his palm was struck by the cold qi. The solid stone suddenly cracked open. Following this, streams of hot lava flowed out from the crack and quickly penetrated Yi Fei's body through his skin. So hot, so hot. Finally, I don't have to suffer from the cold qi anymore. Yi Fei could feel the hot lava flowing through his body. It was so comfortable that it felt like he was soaking in a hot spring. At the same time, the two streams of cold qi and hot qi flowed through Yi Fei's body, rapidly increasing the quality of Yi Fei's dantian. After cultivating for less than 10 days, Yi Fei discovered that the quality of his dantian had increased from second-grade tian rank to third-grade tian rank. Chapter 457. Released from prison. The commotion caused by Yi Fei's cultivation, this time, was too great. There was both cold air and earth fire. The prisoners in the prison also enjoyed the extreme weather of extreme cold and extreme heat. Of course, the two bailiffs were the most shocked. They had arranged for Yi Fei to stay here, to provoke Old Master Long Ying, so that they could teach Yi Fei a lesson. In the end, what did they see when they arrived? Long Ying, the overlord of the heavenly prison, was sitting cross-legged at the entrance to protect Yi Fei. The interior of the prison was filled with ice and snow at one moment and waves of heat at the next. They had no idea what Yi Fei was cultivating inside. All the warriors in the heavenly prison wore special shackles that restricted their true yuan. Even so, Yi Fei was still able to cultivate. The two bailiffs were no longer shocked. Instead, they were filled with fear. What are you looking at? If you dare to tell anyone about what happened here, I won't let you off. Long Ying glared at the two bailiffs fiercely. It was these two people who had almost caused him to offend a monstrous junior like Yi Fei. The two bailiffs didn't dare to say anything else. They shut their mouths tightly and nodded at Long Ying to show that they understood. Then, they left and didn't say a word about what had happened here. In the layer of ice, Yi Fei nodded silently when he heard the conversation between Long Ying and the two bailiffs. Only then did he believe that Long Ying wasn't in cahoots with the Yo family. With Long Ying taking the initiative to stand guard outside, Yi Fei didn't care whether this was the imperial prison or not. He continued to close his eyes and cultivate, staying here for a full 30 days. On this day, it was finally time for Yi Fei to be released from prison. He stopped cultivating and walked out of the prison cell. He thanked Long Ying, who was also sitting cross-legged. "Old master, I'm sorry. I misunderstood you previously." Haha, don't mention it. We didn't get to know each other until we fought. Long Ying knew that Yi Fei was going to be released from prison today. His attitude was also very friendly. After the two of them exchanged pleasantries, Long Ying probed, "Little brother, from the looks of it, you should be participating in this year's Earth Roll contest, right? Old Master also knows about the Earth rankings?" Yi Fei asked. "How could I not know? This is a major event in the northern region. The 4 great countries hold an Earth ranking competition every 3 years. That's where all the youths become famous. To tell you the truth, the Long family I'm from is in the imperial capital. If you don't mind, I have another request. Long Ing revealed a look of reminiscence. Yi Fei then knew how great of an influence the Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list had on the young geniuses in the North region. He nodded and said, "Old man, if you have any instructions, please let me know." Without Long Ying's guidance, he wouldn't have been able to get rid of the cold qi in his body so quickly. Since Long Ying had helped him, Yi Fei was willing to repay him. It's nothing major. I've been in prison for 10 years, and I'm a little homesick. Little brother, if you don't mind, please help me pass a letter to my family when you head to the imperial capital. Long Ying took out a letter that he had written long ago and passed it to Yi Fei. There was a glimmer of light in his eyes. The old man was also a scheming person. He had realized that Yi Fei's potential and character were not bad. Hence, he had the intention of letting the Long family befriend Yi Fei. In the future, when Yi Fei grew stronger, the Long family might be able to gain some benefits as well. Of course, Yi Fei didn't know what Long Ying was thinking. Seeing that he was just passing a letter along the way, it was very simple. He took the letter and walked to the exit of the prison with Long Ying. "Congratulations on being released from prison, big brother. Big brother, come back and visit us when you're free." "What nonsense are you talking about? Big brother is such a talent. How can he be trapped in a small prison?" After this period of time, Yi Fei's reputation had spread throughout the prison. Knowing that today was the day that Yi Fei was released from prison, all the prisoners, regardless of whether they knew him or not, came to see him off, hoping to get familiar with him. General Mo Xiong was so happy that he was about to jump up and down. Once Yi Fei left, old Master Long would no longer have the heart to fight for supremacy. In that case, Mo Xiong, will be the most powerful person in the prison. As for the bailiffs in the prison, all of them now treated Yi Fei as old Master Long. Who would dare to find trouble with Yi Fei for no reason? Yi Fei smoothly walked out of the prison under the escort of the crowd. As soon as he walked out, he saw Fierce Neo waiting there with a cold smile. As old Master Long had given a gag order, Fierce Neo didn't know about Yi Fei's situation in the prison. However, after the Fierce Neo family's special care, this kid must have been taught a lesson in prison. He should know pain and fear. Fierce Neo arrogantly walked up to Yi Fei and stretched out his hand. "Kid, you know that you can't get away with going against me. If you don't want to stay in prison, give me what I want." "Scram," Yi Fei said coldly. He only said one word to Fierce Neo before turning to leave. Fierce Neo was so angry that he glared fiercely at the two bailiffs who had taken care of him. "What are you doing? What did you promise me?" "Young Master Neo, I'm sorry. We can't help you. This person isn't someone we can offend." The two bailiffs returned the 2 space bags to Fierce Neo with a cold expression. They were bailiffs and were paid by the government. No matter how powerful the Fierce Neo family was, they couldn't do anything to them. Fierce Neo was so angry that his face turned green. He didn't expect Yi Fei to not give face to the Fierce Neo family. Even 2 lowly bailiffs dared to not give him face. Fierce Neo was so angry that he was about to explode. But before he could do anything, Yi Fei, who was walking in front of him, suddenly remembered something. He turned around and said to the 2 Yamen runners, "I remember that you arrested me and put me in jail because you suspected that I was an enemy spy, right?" "That's right. However, after a month of investigation, we found that young Master Yi was innocent." The 2 bailiffs were very careful around Yi Fei. They were afraid that they wouldn't serve Yi Fei well. Fierce Neo was so angry that his nose became crooked. After all, this was a world where the strong were respected. As long as Yi Fei was strong and had a hard fist, even the imperial power would have to bow to him. Yi Fei nodded in satisfaction and glanced at Fierce Neo. He said coldly, "Since you've proven my innocence, then this person is the one who framed me. Heavenly King City is a place where laws are followed. May I ask if you have to go to jail for framing others?" The 2 bailiffs groaned inwardly. They didn't expect Yi Fei to have such a trick up his sleeve. Unfortunately, what Yi Fei said was the truth. It was indeed fierce Niu who framed Yi Fei first. The two bailiffs could only brace themselves and nod. Of course we have to put him in jail for framing others. Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up and put him in jail. I don't want you to lock him up for a year. Anyway, you have to lock him up for as long as you lock me up. Old master, I'll have to trouble you to take good care of this young Master Niu after he's in jail. Yi Fei flashed his white teeth at fierce Niu. However, in fierce Niu's eyes, he felt that Yi Fei wasn't a good person. Not only did he ignore the Niu family, he even wanted to frame him and put him in jail. Fierce Niu would be an idiot to give up his pampered life and go to jail. He didn't wait for the bailiffs to come closer and shouted angrily, "Rebel! Rebel! Do you know who I am? Do you know what the Niu family does? Who dares to arrest me? Young Master Niu this." The two bailiffs were hesitant. However, old Master Long Ying's eyes lit up. Others might be afraid of the Niu family, but he wasn't. Moreover, Long Ying also felt that this was a good opportunity for the Long family to deepen their friendship with Yi Fei. Old Master Long immediately walked over. Ignoring Fierce Bull's struggle, he slapped him on the face and then shouted, "Fierce Bull, stop yelling in front of this old man. Let me tell you, the Imperial Prison is a place where fists matter. Don't use the Bull family to scare this old man. As long as your fists aren't as hard as this old man's, you will be in charge of carrying our urinals and flushing our toilets. If this old man finds anything dirty on them, you will eat it yourself." "What? You want me to carry your urinals and flush your toilet bowls?" "No, I would rather die than obey." Fierce Niu struggled and was frightened. He refused to enter the jail, even if he was beaten to death. This made old Master Long angry. He slapped Fierce Niu again. Fierce Niu was like a fallen leaf in the autumn wind. He spun and fell to the ground. He saw stars and was dragged into the jail. Chapter 458. After all, the Niu family was not an ordinary family. The two bailiffs could not afford to offend Yi Fei, but they could still send a letter to the Niu family and tell them about Niu Meng's encounter. Niu family, Heavenly King City. The head of the Niu family, Niu Zhen, had just taken off his battle robe and returned home from the northern Heavenly King's residence. Before he could eat, a servant of the Niu family rushed in and reported, "Master, there's trouble. Eldest young master has caused trouble." Bam! Hearing that Niu Meng had gone out to cause trouble again, Niu Zhen was so angry that his eyes turned into copper bells. He scolded loudly, "That useless, unfilial son. What trouble did he cause this time?" "Master, I'm not too sure either. But it's true that eldest young master has been arrested and sent to the Imperial Prison. The bailiffs from the Imperial Prison personally came to deliver a letter." The servant said, "What? My son has been arrested and sent to the Imperial Prison?" Niu Zhen was really shocked. One must know that the Niu family was considered a big family in the northern Heavenly King City. Who did not give the Niu family any face and actually send his son to the Imperial Prison? Sensing the severity of the situation, Niu Zhen couldn't sit still any longer. She rushed to the prison as fast as she could. Then, Niu Zhen looked at her son in shock. At this moment, he was actually flushing the toilet bowl with a bloody nose and a swollen face. He could not believe his eyes. "Niu Meng, you... Father, What about me? Have you cleaned the toilet bowl? Can you please bring a urinal in to wash as well?" Long Ying stood by the side and said sarcastically. Niu Meng was so ashamed that he wanted to find a place to hide. Niu Zhen was so angry that his face turned black. However, this was the Imperial Prison. No matter how powerful the Niu family was, they did not dare to cause trouble in the Imperial Prison. He could only pay a little to bribe the bailiffs of the Imperial Prison to get a chance to meet Niu Meng alone. The moment they met, Niu Meng's tears flowed uncontrollably. "Father, you have to help me. I'm so miserable because of that brat. They actually want me to clean the toilet bowl for a month. If I can't clean it, they even want me to eat it. Son, calm down. First, tell me what's going on. Who did you offend?" Niu Zhen was still the head of the Niu family. Even though his heart ached for his son's misfortune, he still maintained his calm. He immediately told Niu Meng to tell him everything that had happened. When Niu Zhen heard that Niu Meng was in such a state because he failed to snatch the treasure by force, Niuzhen was infuriated. He directly slapped Niu Meng across the face. "You idiot, the inner cores of Wu Jun grade vicious beasts. Why didn't you come back and tell us about such a big matter? Why did you have to do it in private?" Niuzhen said angrily, "Father, I just wanted to give you a surprise. Who knew that the brat would be so difficult to deal with? Father, you must avenge me." Niu Meng covered his face. Suddenly, he thought of something and said in horror, "Also, get me out of here quickly. I don't want to hold the urinal. I don't want to flush the toilet." "Sigh, son, now that you're in prison, it's not up to you to decide. Just treat this as a trial. If you keep getting into trouble, I won't dare to pass the position of the head of the family to you in the future." Niuzhen sighed. After all, the northern Heavenly King City was not like other places. The Niu family's power was not at a level where they could casually rescue people from prison. Niuzhen could only harden his heart and walk out under Niu Meng's desperate gaze. When he reached the door, he thought for a while and couldn't bear it. He turned around and said, "Son, don't worry. You won't suffer in vain this time. No matter who that person is, if he dares to harm my son like this, he will not be let off." However, as he said those words, Niuzhen's expression was not one of anger. Instead, it was one of greed. A martial lord-level ferocious beast's inner core. If we are to obtain it, perhaps our Niu family will be able to produce a 10th-level martial king expert. You guys immediately go and find out the whereabouts of that kid. He is from the Taishan sacred ground, so it should be easy to identify him. Niuzhen instructed the servants beside him with a gloomy face. The few servants nodded and quickly rushed to the streets in all directions. After Yi Fei left the prison, he wasn't in a hurry to leave the city. After unexpectedly obtaining the earthly fire inner core, Yi Fei immediately became very interested in the warrior market in the Heavenly King City. He hoped that he could pick up some scraps and find some treasures. Yi Fei continued to stroll around the bazaar and found a lot of treasures. However, the price of these treasures made Yi Fei flinch. At this time, Yi Fei knew that picking up scraps could only depend on luck and not luck. Yi Fei touched the remaining tens of thousands of spiritual crystals in his pocket and looked at the treasures in the market that were worth hundreds of thousands or even millions of spiritual crystals. He decisively decided to stop looking for treasures and rush to the capital of the Baiyang country to participate in the Earthless contest. Thus, Yi Fei passed through the city and planned to leave the city to continue his journey. How is it? Is it this kid? It can't be wrong. Not many people from the Taishan sacred ground can come to the Heavenly King City. It just so happens that the Earth list is changing soon. Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up and inform the master. These few servants of the Niu clan were secretly delighted with each other. Each and every one of them ran very fast. They all rushed back to Niuzhen to ask for rewards. In the crowd, Yi Fei had already noticed the abnormality behind him. Although he didn't hear what they were saying, he could roughly figure out what was going on when he saw the uniform of the servants. People from the Niu family? It seems that Niu Meng is still unwilling to give up. Is he planning to take revenge on me, or is he after the earthly fire inner core? If it's the earthly fire inner core, I'm afraid the Niu family will have come in vain. A cold smile flashed across Yi Fei's face. He didn't care about these people behind him. He continued to walk and fool around. The Heavenly King City was bigger than Yi Fei had imagined. After walking for a day, Yi Fei finally saw the city gate in the distance. Of course, outside the city gate, the head of the Niu family, Niuzhen, was already sitting there. When Yi Fei walked out of the city, Niuzhen stared at him with his bell-like eyes and walked over with a cold face. "Kid, are you the one who put my son in jail? Who are you? Tell me your name. I don't kill nameless people." Yi Fei was not surprised and deliberately provoked him. "Okay, listen to me. I am Niuzhen, the head of the Niu family, LV7 Martial King. Niu Meng, who you framed, is my son." Niuzhen introduced himself. He was surprised to see that Yi Fei was a LV6 Martial King at such a young age. However, he didn't take Yi Fei seriously. After all, this was the territory of the Niu family, and he was an LV7 Martial King expert. Niuzhan was confident that once they started fighting, he could definitely kill Yi Fei. However, Niuzhan didn't plan to kill Yi Fei. Yi Fei's LV6 martial king cultivation gave Niuzhan some pressure. Chapter 459. Powerful? I don't think so. Also, I've already refined the earthly fire inner core. Even if you want to snatch it, you won't have the chance. Yi Fei's face was cold as he walked around Niuzhan and continued walking. What? That's actually an earthly fire inner core. When Niuzhan heard Yi Fei's words, he was shocked. The inner cores of Wu Jun's vicious beasts were already very precious. The earthly fire inner core was something that could only be found by chance. The greed in his heart could no longer be suppressed. Niuzhan simply did not believe that Yi Fei would be able to refine the earthen fire inner pellet. A treasure like that could only be refined by a martial lord. A martial king would simply not be able to refine it. This was also the reason why the stall owner from before, despite selling it for so long, was repeatedly misjudged by others. Junior, stop right there. Do you think you can fool me with these lies? After hearing that the treasure was an earthly fire inner core, Niuzhan was even more unwilling to let Yi Fei leave. In a flash, Yi Fei's path was blocked by Niuzhan. What do you mean? I don't think you're here to take revenge for your son. You're here to snatch the earthly fire inner core. Yi Fei's eyes flashed with anger. It was normal for this person to take revenge for Niumeng. Yi Fei could not say anything. However, looking at Niuzhan's attitude, he was not here to take revenge for his son. He was probably here to snatch the treasure. Being criticized by Junior in front of everyone, Niuzhan's face flashed with shame. However, the earthly fire inner core was too important. Since he was exposed, Niuzhan did not deny it. He said unyieldingly, "We have to take revenge for our son." The earthly fire inner core was something that my Nio clan wanted first. You're in the wrong for interfering halfway. Young man, sometimes it's not a good thing to be young and impetuous. Hand over the earthly fire inner core and obediently go to prison. Explain that you framed my son. Since you're a disciple of the Holy Land, I won't hold it against you. Niuzhan seemed certain that he had Yi Fei under control. He even purposely put on a magnanimous appearance. However, Yi Fei only felt disgusted by Niuzhan's words. What do you mean by the Nio family has taken a fancy to him, and you have paid him in advance? You guys didn't even do it. Just because you discovered that it was a treasure, you claimed that it belonged to your Nio family. Don't you think you're being too overbearing? Yi Fei said while holding back his anger. After all, this was Heavenly King City. He didn't want to go to jail again. Otherwise, with this person's attitude, Yi Fei would have taken action long ago. Hearing this, Niuzhan nodded as if it was a matter of course. He sneered and said, "Humph, my Nio clan is so domineering. Why are you not convinced? Let me tell you, this is Beiyang, not a rural place like your North Sea. Even a Taishan Holy Land can't protect you. Brat, you only have one path today, and that is to hand over the earth fire inner core and apologize to my son. Then get lost immediately. Otherwise, if I attack, I can't guarantee that you'll still be alive." Niuzhan threatened. You dare to kill someone right under the feet of the Northern Heavenly King? Yi Fei had a strange expression on his face. Ha ha ha. Yi Fei's words made the servants of the Nio clan, who were in charge of clearing the area, burst out laughing. Niuzhan could not help but laugh coldly as he explained, "What an idiot. The decree of the Northern Heavenly King is only effective in the city. Once you're out of the city, you'll have to rely on your own strength. Even if I beat you to death here, the Heavenly King's palace wouldn't care." A hideous grin appeared on Niuzhan's face. "I see. So the decree of the Northern Heavenly King is only effective in the city. Why didn't you tell me earlier? If you had told me earlier, I would have taken action earlier. I don't want to waste my time talking nonsense with someone like you." Yi Fei smiled. Niuzhan was infuriated. "Brat, what did you say?" "I said go to hell." Yi Fei's fist suddenly turned into a meteor and smashed toward Niuzhan's face. Since Yi Fei knew that he wouldn't be caught if he were to attack outside the city, he would not hesitate. a sixth-layer martial king against a seventh-layer martial king. Instead, Yi Fei, whose cultivation was one layer lower than Niuzhan's, had taken the initiative to attack without any warning. Niuzhan was furious. "Brat, since you're courting death, don't blame the Niu clan for being merciless." Niuzhan roared furiously. What he had said to Yi Fei just now was not all nonsense. Even though the decree of the Northern Heavenly King was not effective outside the city, Yi Fei was still a disciple of the Taishan sacred ground. It wasn't good to kill him directly. After all, he had already given Yi Fei a chance. Not only did he not cherish it, he even dared to attack first. Even if the Niu clan killed Yi Fei, the sacred ground would have nothing to say. Therefore, Niuzhan would not show any mercy. Dragon, elephant, raging bull strength. Raging bull trampling the mountain. Boom! Niuzhan's muscular body abruptly soared into the sky like an enraged mad bull, bringing with it an incomparably immense strength. With each step he took, even a mountain peak could be trampled into pieces. A look of disdain flashed across Niuzhan's face as he attacked. "You're just a sixth-layer Martial King, Jr. How dare you fight with a seventh-layer Martial King like me? Taishan's sacred ground is full of arrogant people like you. You're just a seventh-layer Martial King. In my eyes, killing you is no different from killing a pig or a dog." As he spoke, Yi Fei's fist had already collided with Niuzhan's feet. Yi Fei felt his entire body sink. The ground he was standing on had already caved in by Niuzhan's raging bull strength. "Ah!" Niuzhan roared. To his horror, he discovered that Yi Fei was not only unscathed after being struck by his full-strength attack as a seventh-level martial king, but the strength of Yi Fei's fist seemed to be even more terrifying than his mad bull's strength. Niuzhan's legs were already faintly aching from merely stepping on Yi Fei's fist. How is this possible? This brat's physical body is so terrifying. However, I will not lose. With my strength as a seventh-layer martial king, I can definitely suppress this brat. Dragon elephant strength, mammoth mountain splitting. Seeing that his attack had failed, Niuzhan's body suddenly spun in the air. His feet stomped fiercely once again, causing the entire sky to explode. What's going on? That seems to be the head of the Niu family, Niuzhan. Who offended the Niu family? Even the head of the Niu family is personally involved. I heard that a disciple of the Taishan sacred ground had a dispute with the Niu family over a treasure. So it's a disciple of a small sacred ground in the countryside. Other than Nan Ruofeng, who has some potential in the North Sea, there is no one else. A portion of the experts in the city sensed that there was a fight here and gathered around. It looked lively. However, when they heard that Yi Fei was from the Taishan sacred ground, many of them showed disdain. The fight had not ended yet, but they seemed to have already predicted that Yi Fei would be defeated. They did not even bother to take another look. They turned around and prepared to leave. Sky Demon kill. Yi Fei did not care about the people around him. His eyes were fixed on Niuzhan's descending legs. His footsteps paused, and his body suddenly left the ground and rushed into the sky. His demonic fists were filled with killing intent, and they continuously collided with Niuzhan's mammoth strength. Boom! 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 Yi Fei's fists were too terrifying. The terrifying power caused Niuzhan's sturdy body to continuously tremble. On the surface, Niuzhan, who was a seventh-layer martial king, seemed to have the absolute advantage. However, many experts were shocked to discover that it was extremely difficult for Niuzhan to resist Yi Fei's Sky Demon kill. How is this possible? A seventh-layer martial king against a sixth-layer martial king. Niuzhan is actually being suppressed. Haha, Niuzhan has met his nemesis. That brat is walking the path of body cultivation. The brute force of a Niu family has no effect on him. Chapter 460. Compensation, Strength of Dragon and Elephant. In the sky, Niuzhan roared furiously. He had already activated his family's strongest martial art, dragon and elephant mad bull strength, to the limit. He stomped on the ground, causing the space to tremble and the ground to shake. However, no matter how much strength Niuzhan used, It was nothing in front of Yi Fei's complete war demon immortal body. Just as the spectating experts had expected, the Niu family's martial art was indeed powerful. However, for a body cultivator who specialized in cultivating his physical body, no matter how strong Niu Jun was, he could not break through Yi Fei's defense. On the contrary, Yi Fei's Sky Demon Kill, which contained 70% fist intent, posed a great threat to Niu Jun. Sky Demon split. Yi Fei did not want to fight with Niu Jun for too long. After realizing that Niu Jun's strength was useless against him, he decisively used his strongest move. A demonic fist tore through the void and smashed forward fiercely. Its terrifying strength was even twice as strong as Niu Jun's strength of dragon and elephant. Before Niu Jun's feet landed, Yi Fei's demonic fist had already avoided Niu Jun's feet and suddenly appeared in front of him. Go down. Puff. It was like being hit by a meteorite. Niu Jun's defense of the Seventh King Realm was unable to block Yi Fei's horrifying punch. His chest caved in, and he fell from the sky while vomiting blood. Then, he smashed into the ground, creating a huge crater. Niu Jun was a LV7 Martial King Realm expert after all. Even though he was severely injured, he did not die. He lay on the ground and looked at Yi Fei in horror. He could not accept the fact that he, a LV7 Martial King Realm expert, had been defeated by a LV6 Martial King Realm Jr. Boom! Seeing Yi Fei's move, many warriors who had some understanding of the North Sea's factions were in an uproar. They widened their eyes in disbelief. Sky Demon Kill. Isn't that the true martial art of the Heavenly Insect? It can't be. This person is wearing the uniform of the Taishan Holy Land. Or did something big happen in the North Sea? On the city walls, many warriors were confused by Yi Fei's Sky Demon Kill. This was because the North Sea was just too small. Even though its location was important, most warriors were still disdainful when mentioning the North Sea. Otherwise, news of the destruction of the Heavenly Insect would have already spread throughout Heavenly King City. Because the North Sea was small, the news spread very slowly. At the very least, very few people in Heavenly King City knew about it. Yi Fei wouldn't be so kind as to tell them. Your life is quite tough. Since that's the case, then you should also have a taste of my dragon and elephant strength. At this moment, Yi Fei was truly enraged. Seeing that Niu Jun was still alive, his gaze turned cold. Suddenly, Yi Fei imitated Niu Jun and used Dragon Elephant Stomping Mountain. Boom! Yi Fei's stomp was much more terrifying than Niu Jun's. After all, the war demon body wasn't an ordinary physique. The ancient war demons didn't just have a strong defense. Their strength was also terrifying. When Niu Jun, who was lying on the ground with serious injuries, felt the power contained in Yi Fei's feet in the sky, he couldn't help but cry out in surprise. How was this possible? That is the real Dragon Elephant Stomping Mountain. You actually learned it after watching it a few times. Don't step on him. Another old but vigorous voice rang out, shaking everyone's eardrums. In the crowd, a white-haired old man rushed to Niu Jun at an extremely fast speed. He hugged Niu Jun, intending to escape. You want to leave? Have a taste of my foot first. Yi Fei's gaze turned cold. Niu Jun had provoked them first. If he didn't teach the Niu family an unforgettable lesson, these people would think that the Taishan sacred ground was still as weak and easy to bully as before. Boom! Yi Fei's entire body emitted a blazing golden light like a golden meteor. He stepped down with the old man and Niu Jun. Junior, how dare you? The old man's face turned cold as he hugged Niu Jun helplessly. He couldn't fight with Yi Fei at all. In a hurry, the old man could only throw out a supreme treasure shield in front of him. In the end, Yi Fei's feet collided with the shield. Yi Fei didn't move an inch, but the shield under his feet let out a creaking sound and broke inch by inch. With a boom, it turned into fragments that filled the sky and was completely destroyed. The dragon elephant shield of the Niu family has been broken by someone. Niu Jun and the old man widened their bell-like eyes in shock. Especially the old man, who was Niu Jun's father and the strongest expert of the Nyo family. He was a LV9 martial king. However, when the old man felt the power contained in Yi Fei's feet, his eyes revealed a deep sense of fear. What kind of monster does the Taishian sacred land have? He can break a supreme treasure with his feet alone. The old man shuddered just by imagining the scene. Nyojin also felt like he had kicked an iron board. He immediately looked at the old man and said, "Father, what should we do? This junior is too strange. Is he really from the Taishian sacred land?" "Shut up. What do you mean by Taishian sacred land? The sword maniac elder has already achieved the sword sacred realm. He is the titled martial king of the North Sea, Wu Jun. He is not someone you can slander," the old man said loudly. Not only was he warning Nyo Jun, but he was also telling the spectating experts why the Nyo family suddenly changed their attitude toward Yi Fei. The source of it all was a branch of the Nyo clan, which happened to be located in the 18 kingdoms of the Northern Sea. After hearing the news that the sword maniac elder had achieved the 12th layer martial sacred realm, the branch immediately transmitted the information to them at their fastest speed. Coincidentally, the old man also heard that his grandson had been framed and sent to prison by a disciple of the Taishian sacred land. Nyo Jun wanted to take revenge, so he hurried over. He originally wanted to stop Nyo Jun, but when he arrived, he saw his son almost killed. When he thought of the news that the titled Wu Jun had appeared in the Taishian sacred land, the old man no longer dared to treat Yi Fei as an ordinary junior. Before Yi Fei could finish his words, the old man held Nyojin back and quickly apologized to Yi Fei. "Young hero, it's all my fault for not teaching my son well. My son and grandson offended you. I hope you can give me some face and let them go." "Let them go? Your son and grandson not only framed me and sent me to prison, but also stole my treasures. You want me to let them go with a simple, give you a favor? Do you think I am stupid? Or do you think the Taishian sacred land is a sheep that you can bully as you like?" Yi Fei walked down from the sky coldly, but he did not continue to attack. He did not care about the 7th level of the martial king realm, but the 9th level of the martial king realm was difficult to deal with. Yi Fei's words made the old man and Nyojin blush. They felt that Yi Fei's words were reasonable. After all, in the world of martial arts, strength was everything. Whether it was Yi Fei or the Taishian sacred land, the Nyo family could not afford to offend either of them. The old man could only lower his head. "Young hero, this is the fault of the Nyo family. I can compensate you on behalf of the Nyo family. What do you think of 100,000 spiritual crystals?" 100,000? Yi Fei was shocked. It seemed that the Nyo family was quite rich. Compared to killing Nyo Jun, Yi Fei suddenly felt that it was better to take advantage of the situation to get some benefits. Chapter 461. Invitation card. After saying this, Yi Fei stared at the old man, ready to bargain. However, the old man didn't even blink as he nodded and said, 1,000,000 spirit crystals, no problem. Nyo Jun also heaved a sigh of relief. Obviously, 1,000,000 spiritual crystals was a huge sum in the North Sea. In a strong country like the Bayong country, 1,000,000 spiritual crystals was a huge sum for ordinary warriors. However, to many families, it was not worth mentioning. "Young hero, this is 1,000,000 spiritual crystals. Consider it our Nyo family's compensation to you." The old man waved his hand, and a large number of spiritual crystals piled up in front of Yi Fei. There were exactly 1,000,000 spiritual crystals. Many warriors were envious. They knew that the Nyo family had really paid a heavy price this time. "Sigh, I didn't expect that the powerful Nyo family would lower their heads to a junior. What's his name again? Maybe he will become famous in the future." All the warriors in Heavenly King City knew how domineering the Nyo family was. They could seriously injure Nyo Jun and force the entire Nyo family to lower their heads. Yi Fei's performance was not shocking, but it was enough to make Yi Fei famous in Heavenly King City. However, when everyone thought about it, they felt that it was inevitable that the Nyo family would lower their heads. What was Yi Fei's strength? Most importantly, The Nyo family patriarch had brought back the news that Elder Sword Maniac of the Taishan Sacred Ground had stepped onto the path of a sword sage and become a titled warrior, Wujun. The cultivators of the Northern Ocean country could look down on the 18 Northern Sea countries. But if a titled martial lord appeared in the Northern Sea, then the situation would be very different. Not to mention these cultivators. Even the king of the Northern Ocean country would have to carefully consider the severity of the situation if he wanted to attack the Northern Sea. He had been prepared to extort them, but the Nyo family had taken out 1 million spiritual crystals so easily. Yifei was speechless. If he had known this would happen, he would have asked for 3 to 5 million more. I am indeed too righteous and kind. Yifei was not so thick-skinned as to go back on his word on the spot. 1 million it is. Even if I don't need these spirit crystals, it's not a bad idea to bring them back to strengthen my family Yi. All right, since you guys have made up for it, as long as your Nyo family doesn't provoke me in the future, I won't provoke you guys either. With a casual wave of his hand, Yifei used his powerful will to store all the spirit crystals on the ground into his interspatial ring. Then, he nodded at the old man and Nyo Jun. He turned around, intending to leave. Only then did Nyo Jun let go of her worries. She looked at Yifei with eyes full of fear. Nyo Jun knew that from today on, no one in the Nyo family or Heavenly King City would dare to look down on the disciples of the Taishan Holy Land. Nyo Jun was in the 7th realm of the Martial King realm. It could be said that Yifei had stepped on the head of the Nyo family and made himself and the Taishan Holy Land famous. This made Nyo Jun very depressed, and he unconsciously glanced at the old man. "Father," Nyo Jun called out unwillingly. "Young hero, please wait." The old man gave Nyo Jun a look, signaling for him to shut up. Then he called out to Yifei and said, "Young hero, it seems like you're going to the capital city to participate in this year's Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list. So what if I am?" Yifei turned his head and looked at the old man coldly. This look actually made the old man feel frightened. This young man's eyes were so scary. However, how could the old man take this lying down after extorting 1 million spirit crystals from the Nyo family? If that's the case, then it's a coincidence. I happen to have an invitation from the Heavenly King Mansion. If you are free, why don't you go to the Southern Mountain Military Camp in Heavenly King City to take a look? All the young talents in the vicinity of Heavenly King City who are participating in the Earth Supreme ranking list are gathered there. You will definitely find many people there. The old man did not give Yifei any chance to think. He took out a red invitation card enthusiastically and handed it to Yifei. Then he cupped his fists and said goodbye. After saying that, he grabbed Nyo Jun and flew back to the Nyo family. Yifei was confused. What was this old man up to? Could it be another conspiracy? However, it did not seem like it. No matter how arrogant the Nyo family was, they would not dare to use the name of the Heavenly King Mansion to harm others. Moreover, Yifei could see that there was a seal of the Heavenly King Mansion on the invitation card. There was a high chance that it was an invitation card from the Northern Heavenly King Mansion. Southern Mountain Military Camp? Those who are able to participate in the Earth Supreme ranking list are the geniuses of the geniuses and the experts of the experts. Why would they gather there for no reason? Yifei held the invitation card, and there was a flash of curiosity in his eyes. Nyo Jun, who had returned to the Nyo family, immediately stared angrily at the old man and asked the question in his heart. "Father, that lad is just a disciple of the Taishan Holy Land. We have already suffered a great loss by giving him 1 million spiritual crystals. Who knows how many families secretly laugh at us? Why did you give him an invitation card from the Heavenly King Mansion?" "Ha ha, son, that is why I feel very uneasy about you as the head of the family." Now that the Taishan Holy Land is in the limelight, our small Nyo family confronting the Heavenly King Mansion is like hitting a rock with an egg. The old man sighed. "Father, even if that is the case, we have already compensated that lad with 1 million spiritual crystals and let bygones be bygones. Why did you give him an invitation card again? An invitation card from the Heavenly King Mansion is hard to get. Without some strength and connections, It would be very difficult for our Niu family to get one. Niuzhen still could not understand. The old man sighed even more and scolded Niuzhen. Idiot! We can't provoke the Taishan Holy Land directly, but can't we play some tricks in the dark? Do you think I gave that lad an invitation card out of kindness? Don't forget that those who can participate in the hunt are the strongest young talents in the vicinity of Heavenly King City. All of them have their eyes on the top of their heads, and ordinary warriors can't enter their eyes. At this time, a country boy from the North Sea suddenly broke in. What do you think they will do? Needless to say, of course, they will beat him up like a dog. Father, I understand. You want to kill him with a borrowed knife. Indeed, the older the ginger, the wiser. Niuzhen finally understood and immediately became enraptured. However, he was still a little worried. What if that lad doesn't go? He will definitely go. The old man was very certain. There was nostalgia and a touch of regret in his eyes. As long as a warrior is determined to become stronger, he will not miss such a grand event. Unfortunately, I won't have this opportunity. You and your son are good for nothings. The dignified young master of the Niu family was taken to the celestial prison to wash the toilet. Humph! The more he thought about it, the angrier the old man became. With a bang, the old man slammed the table in front of him. Niuzhen could not help but blush. However, Niumeng was his son after all. Niuzhen asked cautiously, Father, why don't you go to the Heavenly King Mansion and ask if they can release Niumeng? Scram! You father and son still think that this old man hasn't lost enough face. Tell your precious son that this time, treat it as a lesson for him. In these 3 months, let him suffer in the heavenly prison. At the same time, let him temper his character. Otherwise, when you and I die, the entire Niu family will be ruined by him. Chapter 462. Prodigy Hunt. The southern mountain of the Heavenly King City was also known as the Mountain of Vicious Beasts. Here, vicious beasts were as numerous as the hairs on a cow. Among them, vicious beasts of the martial ancestor realm made up the majority of the population. Every year in the southern mountain, or when the number of vicious beasts reached a certain level, a terrifying beast tide would form on the southern mountain. When that time came, countless vicious beasts would rush out from the southern mountain and destroy villages and cities in their path. They would kill countless people and were considered a great threat to the Northern Ocean Kingdom. Therefore, generations of kings of the Northern Ocean Kingdom would set up majestic cities in places where beast tides were prone to occur and send heavenly king-level experts to guard them to prevent the beast tides from causing too much damage to the Northern Ocean Kingdom. The Southern Mountain Military Camp, which was also the Northern Heavenly King City, was set up specifically to deal with the vicious beasts. Of course, this was not what the Niu family had told Yifei. Out of curiosity, Yifei had asked a random passerby to find out. As for why the young prodigies of the Heavenly King City would gather at the military camp, there was a reason for that. It was said that every year before the opening of the Earth Roll, young prodigies from all over the world, as well as some powerful monstrous prodigies, would gather here. Firstly, they could communicate with each other and exchange martial arts. Secondly, they could kill the vicious beasts in the southern mountain, which could be considered as eliminating evil for the people. In fact, in Yifei's opinion, there was a deeper motive for these people to gather here, and that was to secretly compete with each other to see who was stronger and who could kill more vicious beasts. This way, there was no need for a competition. As long as one observed the number and level of the vicious beasts killed by the other party, one would be able to clearly judge the difference between them. In the future, when they met on the Earth Roll, they would also be able to know what was going on. Sigh. Even though I know that the old man did not have good intentions when he gave me the invitation, it would be a pity if I did not go and take a look at such an interesting place. Yifei looked at the huge army camp in the distance and shook his head with a bitter smile. Unknowingly, he had found this place. The reason was simple. Yifei was also very curious about the young prodigies of Beiyang country. I really want to see how big the gap is between my current strength and those young prodigies. Yifei took out the invitation and walked towards the entrance of the military camp. Halt! Who are you? This is the military camp, no trespassing. The soldiers in the barracks were very vigilant. They were all elite soldiers from the Heavenly King's mansion. They were much more powerful than the soldiers guarding the city gates. They all had a dense, baleful aura around them. Yi Fei knew that this was probably because the soldiers had been infected by the vicious beast for many years. The soldiers in front of him were true war veterans. They were the ones who had used their flesh and blood, their lives, to protect Heavenly King's city behind them. Yi Fei also had some respect for these soldiers in his heart. He handed over the invitation card and said in a deep voice, "I heard that you can participate in the prodigy hunt with the invitation card of the Heavenly King's residence. So, young master is here to participate in the prodigy hunt? Young master, please come in. As long as you have the invitation card, you can enter the South Mountain battlefield. We wish young master victory. Kill as many vicious beasts as possible and protect the people of Beiyang country." The two soldiers looked at the invitation card and immediately looked at Yi Fei with reverence and passion. They gave him a military salute. Yi Fei also subconsciously returned the salute before walking in. The soldiers had strange expressions on their faces. This young master actually saluted us. This is quite refreshing. It should be his first time participating in the prodigy hunt. He doesn't know the rules. Look at his clothes. He seems to be from the Taishan holy ground of the North Sea. A typical small holy ground. A small holy ground is good. At least this young master is willing to treat us as equals. I hope he can last a little longer in the prodigy hunt. Yi Fei's attitude made the two soldiers have a good impression of Yi Fei. Unfortunately, their words carried little weight, and they couldn't help Yi Fei at all. The South Mountain military camp was even larger than Yi Fei had expected. It stretched for more than 10,000 meters. There were at least 200,000 elite soldiers inside. They were the ones who fought the vicious beasts every day. They used their flesh and blood to form the Great Wall. After walking for a full 6 hours, Yi Fei finally passed through the military camp and entered the real South Mountain. This was the territory of the vicious beasts. The strange thing was that he didn't find any powerful vicious beasts along the way. He also didn't see any young geniuses. After thinking for a while, Yi Fei guessed, "It seems that I came too late. Those young geniuses should have gone deep into the South Mountain. The powerful, vicious beasts in the periphery should have either escaped or been killed." Yi Fei took a deep breath. There was a faint smell of blood in the air. Just as Yi Fei took a deep breath, Yi Fei took a deep breath. As he took a breath, a withered tree vine suddenly shot up. When he took a closer look, it wasn't a tree vine. It was clearly the tail of a level 4 martial, honorable giant python vicious beasts. Unlike the ferocious beasts in other places, the ferocious beasts that lived in Nanshan not only reproduced very quickly, but were also very bloodthirsty and crazy. In the eyes of warriors, every part of a ferocious beast was a treasure that was worth hunting. Similarly, in the eyes of the ferocious beasts, every human warrior was a walking treasure pill. Swallowing one would greatly increase their strength. Therefore, on the South Mountain, humans and vicious beasts couldn't coexist peacefully. The only thing that happened when humans and vicious beasts met was to kill. If the vicious beasts didn't die, then they would die. Hiss! The giant python let out a cunning and proud hiss. It was obvious that it had been lying in ambush here for a long time, waiting for human warriors to come over and die. At the place where the giant python was lying in ambush, Yi Fei saw piles of human warriors' corpses. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Without another word, Yi Fei slapped the python with his palm. The python was merely a martial honorable. A casual slap from Yi Fei was enough to turn the python into a pile of minced meat. Smelly blood splattered everywhere. Damn, what kind of blood is this? It smells so bad. Yi Fei didn't expect that the giant python would want to disgust him even after death. He immediately took off his bloody clothes and was about to change into a new one. Rustle, rustle, rustle. Suddenly, there was a slight sound of movement in the grass in front of him. The sound was very soft. If it wasn't for Yi Fei's strong senses, he wouldn't have noticed it. Is there a second vicious beast lying in ambush and trying to sneak up on me? Don't tell me that the vicious beasts here have learned how to march and fight. Yi Fei couldn't help but frown. However, he didn't care too much. With his strength, as long as he didn't encounter vicious beasts like Wu Jun, he didn't need to be afraid. Following the direction of the voice, Yi Fei dashed over. Kill! Yi Fei had already released his massacre fist essence and was ready to kill the vicious beasts hiding in the dark with one punch. However, just as he raised his fist halfway, he couldn't bring himself to do it. Damn, what's going on? He saw that the one lying in the grass wasn't any vicious beasts. Instead, it was a cute little girl with pigtails. Yi Fei almost suspected that the little girl from Shanghua had followed him. Upon closer inspection, Yi Fei discovered that this little girl was even smaller than Shang Luo, and she was even more adorable. Most of her body was hidden by the wild grass, but from the exposed, tender face, Yi Fei could clearly see exhaustion and fear. Was she afraid of him? Chapter 463. A strange little girl. Yi Fei was speechless as he looked at the terrified little girl hiding in the grass. What kind of bastard parents were they? They actually abandoned such a young child in such a dangerous place. It was obvious that they didn't want her to live. The anger in his heart was instantly ignited. Seeing this little girl, Yi Fei couldn't help but think of his younger sister, Yi Shanshan. She had also been abandoned in the wilderness before her father picked her up. Recalling the scene, Yi Fei couldn't help but sympathize with this little girl. He restrained his killing intent and stretched out his hand. He tried his best to put on a kind smile. Little girl, don't be afraid. Big brother isn't a bad person. Although the little girl was frightened, she was still very alert. Seeing that Yi Fei was about to approach her, a large lump of mud smashed into Yi Fei's face. Needless to say, although this little girl was small, her strength was not ordinary. What she threw over was clearly a piece of ordinary mud. Even with the strength of Yi Fei's physical body, he actually felt a wave of pain. Sigh, looks like this little girl is really frightened. Yi Fei smiled bitterly as he wiped the mud off his face. He held back his anger and continued to smile. Pa! When the little girl saw that Yi Fei didn't feel any pain after being hit by the mud, a look of surprise flashed across her eyes. However, this made her even more frightened, seeing that the mud didn't have any effect on him. Bam, bam, bam. 3 large rocks came flying at him again. They made Yi Fei even angrier. If it was someone else, he would have rushed over to beat them up. However, he was facing a 3 or 4-year-old girl. He really couldn't do anything to her. Yi Fei could only continue to smile. Little girl, don't be afraid. Big brother really isn't a bad person. I'll go. Before he could finish his sentence, the little girl finally panicked when she saw that the rocks didn't hurt Yi Fei. She started to babble. She actually took out a large rock that weighed more than 100 pounds and threw it at him with all her strength. Caught off guard, Yi Fei was sent tumbling on the spot. He lay on the ground, feeling extremely depressed and shocked. Everyone knew that he now possessed the immortal battle demon body, granting him an outstanding defense, not to mention the fact that he was a 6-layer martial Emperor realm expert. However, he was still knocked down by a little girl with a rock. Could it be that this little girl is also a warrior? That's too heaven-defying. She looks like she's only 3 or 4 years old. Yi Fei mumbled as he unluckily got up from the ground. His head hurt. Yi Fei didn't need to look in a mirror to know that he must be in a sorry state right now. All of this was caused by the little girl in front of him. All right, I admit that I'm not a good person, but I'm definitely not a bad person either. Where's your family? How'd they get in here? Tell me, and I'll send you home. Yi Fei clenched his teeth and walked over. In the end, he endured it and extended his hand to the little girl in a friendly manner. However, the little girl didn't accept it and continued to stare at Yi Fei in fear. Almost every time Yi Fei took a step forward, she would take a step back in fear. Mud and rocks continuously smashed onto Yi Fei's face and body. Yi Fei's face darkened. He really wanted to grab this little girl and beat her up, while the two were in a stalemate. Suddenly, a commotion could be heard from the other side of the mountain. Following this, A few young men in luxurious clothes with powerful auras rushed over. Everyone, hurry up. That little girl was injured by us. She must be nearby. Yeah, she can't be far. Whoever catches her will be rewarded greatly. Ha ha. There's someone over there. Who's that? Is he also a genius here to participate in the hunt? Why does he look so unfamiliar? Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. For young men in luxurious clothes rushed over as fast as they could. Hearing their conversation, Yifei suddenly realized why the little girl in the grass was so scared. Someone actually wanted to deal with her. She was still a child. This group of cruel scum. Yifei's eyes flashed with anger. If it were any other matter, he wouldn't have bothered. However, this little girl was different. Her experience made Yifei involuntarily think of his younger sister. He suddenly had an impulse to protect this little girl from being bullied. Hide inside and don't make a sound. Big Brother will help you teach this group of bad guys a lesson. Yifei didn't even look back as he strode outside. Without waiting for them to approach the grass, he shouted, "Stop! Who are you? What are you doing here?" Yifei's words caused the four young men to be even more shocked. What's going on? You came to participate in the genius hunt, but you don't even know the young prince? Look at his clothes. I have some impression of them. He seems to be from the Taishan Holy Land. He should be from the North Sea. The young men who could participate in the genius hunt not only had outstanding strength, but also had extensive knowledge. One of them had already recognized Yi Fei's identity and immediately whispered to the arrogant young man in the lead. The arrogant young man sneered when he heard this. So you are a country bumpkin from the North Sea. No wonder you don't recognize me. Boy, listen carefully. This is the seventh prince of the Northern Heavenly King's residence. Quickly come over and greet him. By the way, have you seen an injured little girl nearby? One of the young men asked anxiously. The seventh prince and the others didn't seem to have any intention of looking at Yifei. They were all looking around as if they were looking for clues. The arrogant seventh prince even wanted to walk into the grass behind Yifei to check. Yifei's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly blocked the seventh prince's path. Sorry, I didn't see any little girl. Also, I'm going to cultivate in seclusion here. If there's nothing else, please leave. Yifei's attitude was very tough. Since this group of people didn't respect him or the North Sea, why should he respect them? Even if the seventh prince in front of him was the son of the Northern Heavenly King. These words stunned the four young men at the same time. They couldn't believe that Yifei had blocked them. How dare he say such a thing? After the initial shock, the four young men, including the seventh prince, were all furious. How dare you? Where did this country bumpkin come from? How dare you say such things in front of the seventh prince? Hurry up and kneel down and kowtow to the seventh prince to admit your mistake. One of the young men berated loudly, his finger almost touching Yifei's nose. I remember correctly. The prodigy hunt is only open to the prodigies of the Northern Heavenly King. How did you sneak in? The seventh prince's voice was neither masculine nor feminine. The surrounding young men quickly understood that the seventh prince had developed a bad impression of Yifei. Immediately, one of the young men shouted angrily, "How dare you, country bumpkin, sneak in the prodigy hunt? I'll give you 3 breaths to crawl out of here immediately. Otherwise, we'll attack together and beat you to a pulp. It's the same even if we throw you out." Other than the seventh prince, the other 3 young men surrounded Yifei with malicious intentions. Chapter 464. Genoderma Dalbang. Without hesitation, Yifei unleashed his aura of the 6th layer martial emperor realm. Although these young men were considered geniuses, in Yifei's eyes, their cultivations of the 1st or 2nd layer martial emperor realm were not worthy enough for him to fight with. He only unleashed his aura, which formed a terrifying shockwave, causing the 7th prince to back off in a frenzy. What? 6th layer martial emperor realm. This bumpkin of the Northern Ocean is so powerful. Puff! Wah! Bang! Bang! A series of explosions took place in the air. Yifei did not show any mercy this time. as he was so angry that he even dared to harm a little girl. His aura of the martial emperor realm alone was enough to severely injure them. The four young men were unable to resist the impact of Yi Fei's aura, which caused their bodies to roll on the ground like windmills. In the end, the seventh prince had no choice but to take out a supreme tier wheel and use it as a shield in front of him, barely nullifying Yi Fei's terrifying aura. The other three young men glanced at Yi Fei with a hint of fear instead of fear. "Kid, who are you?" The seventh prince stared at Yi Fei with a cold expression. As the seventh prince, he was rolling on the ground because of Yi Fei's aura, which infuriated the seventh prince. "My name is Yi Fei, and I will never change my name. By the way, don't you understand my words? I told you to shut your filthy mouths and get out of my sight. Do you think I'm joking?" A terrifying, murderous intent was emitted from Yi Fei's body. The murderous intent alone was enough to scare the four young men to death. Not to mention that Yi Fei was a six-layer martial emperor realm expert, an expert that they could not afford to offend even if they worked together. Seventh Prince, where there's life, there's hope. Needless to say, the Ganoderma doll must have fallen into his hands. "We should inform the princess at once." One of the young men approached the seventh prince and said in a low voice, "Damn it, this prince will spare your life today. Don't leave if you have the guts." Knowing that he wouldn't be able to do anything to Yi Fei even if he continued to resist, seventh prince quickly left. The four young men disappeared into the depths of Nanshan Hill as fast as they could. From the looks of it, they definitely won't let this matter rest. I wonder how that little girl offended them for them to actually do this to her. Yi Fei shook his head, not bothering about the seventh prince and the other three who had left. He had great means and guts. If the Heavenly King City's geniuses were all like the seventh prince, Yi Fei could ignore them no matter how many of them came. "All right, it's fine now. Little girl, you can come out now." Yi Fei walked back into the bush to look for the little girl. The strange thing was that the little girl had disappeared without a trace. How was that possible? When he chased the seventh prince and the others away, he had been using his mind to lock onto this patch of grass. I didn't expect this little girl to be so bad. I saved her out of kindness, but she sneaked away. Yi Fei sighed loudly and shook his head. Then, he walked out of the bushes and quickly disappeared into the distance. Not long after Yi Fei left, in the quiet bushes, a little head suddenly popped out. Looking in the direction that Yi Fei had left, she waved her fist fiercely and even made a spitting sound. It was as if she was saying, "I'm not a bad child. You guys are the bad guys." Sensing that there was no danger, the little girl stood up timidly from the bushes. It turned out that her entire body was covered in green leaves. They could be used as clothes. When there was danger, she could spread out the green leaves and hide in the bushes or leaves to protect herself. What a strange little girl. I was wondering why you were so strong. So you're not human. Suddenly, a surprised voice came from behind the little girl. This voice belonged to Yi Fei. He had just pretended to leave. Then, he used the Great Void Steps to quickly return. In the end, he saw this scene. At this moment, Yi Fei realized that the little girl was not human. She was a plant that had taken human form. It was no wonder that the seventh prince and company pursued her so relentlessly. One had to know that it was extremely difficult for plants to gain sentience. There might not even be one in 10,000 years that could successfully take human form. Who would have thought that in a place like the Southern Mountains, where vicious beasts gathered, there would be such a spiritual creature? The little girl was extremely surprised by Yi Fei's sudden appearance. Then, she revealed a look of horror and fear. She screamed in fright, and the green leaves on her body suddenly turned into a series of leaf blades. They whistled as they swept towards Yi Fei. It was not too painful. It was just that the clothes that were covered in mud and dust could no longer withstand the little girl's ravaging. They were torn into pieces and fell to the ground, revealing Yi Fei's muscular upper body. Yi Fei wondered if he was born to clash with the little girl. The mud and rocks thrown at him were not enough. She even took so many leaf blades. It was only because of his thick skin that he was not injured. If it had been the four people from before, they would have been reduced to a sorry state by the little girl. seeing that the leaf blades were unable to hurt Yi Fei and only shredded Yi Fei's clothes. The little girl's white face suddenly revealed an extremely shy expression. She was afraid that she would see a pinprick on Yi Fei's body. She quickly stretched out her tender hands and tightly covered her eyes. However, Yi Fei could clearly see that the gap between the little girl's fingers that were covering her eyes was too wide. He could even see a pair of black eyes moving through the gaps between her fingers. Yi Fei was helpless. If it were any other spiritual creature, he would definitely subdue it without hesitation. He might even slaughter it for a full meal. Facing this pink and cute Lingji doll, Yi Fei had a feeling that he did not know where to start eating. If he ate it, he would not be able to get over it. Forget it. It's fate that we met. Who asked you to be so cute? Now, pretend that I didn't see you. Hurry up and run for your life. Gently lifting the Lingji doll's ponytail, Yi Fei turned and prepared to leave. In the end, he still could not harden his heart to eat such a tender little girl. What Yi Fei, who had turned around, did not know was that when he touched her ponytail, the little girl was no longer afraid this time. Even her wariness towards humans had lessened by quite a bit. Seeing that Yi Fei was about to abandon her and leave, the little girl instantly became anxious. She did not care about her doubts and shyness. She quickly put down her hands and cried out in a babbling voice. "All right, I'll leave. I'll leave, all right?" Yi Fei thought that the Lingji doll was urging him to leave quickly. In his depression, he was about to use the void steps to leave this place. The little girl was so anxious that her cheeks were puffed up. She had a very angry expression. Knowing that Yi Fei could not understand her words, the little girl simply took a step forward with her short legs and rushed towards Yi Fei while babbling. Unfortunately, she was in too much of a hurry to leave. As she took a step forward, her left foot tripped over her right foot. Plop! The little girl fell loudly at Yi Fei's feet. Her face was as red as an apple, but even so, she still quickly hugged Yi Fei's right leg and did not let go. Chapter 465. Chapter 465. Chapter 465. It's all on me. Even though Yi Fei knew that fays that took form from plants and trees were all extraordinary, this was the first time he had seen a little girl who knew how to cry after falling down and had such rich emotions. Of course you can cry, but what do you mean by grabbing my leg and not letting go? She clearly had a vigilant and fearful expression just now, but now she's grabbing onto me and not letting me go? At this moment, Yi Fei was undoubtedly feeling very depressed. Helpless, he really couldn't bring himself to do anything to this human-like Lingji doll. He could only squat down, look at the little girl, and ask, "Little girl, is there anything I can help you with?" After saying that, he thought it was funny. Was he confused? Why would he communicate with a Ganoderma for no reason? This Ganoderma baby probably wouldn't even understand what he was saying. The little girl seemed to understand what Yi Fei was thinking. She suddenly nodded vigorously, indicating that she really did need help. Then she anxiously pointed in a direction. Yi Fei was very surprised. Although there were all kinds of strange things in the world of martial arts, this Ganoderma doll was too miraculous. "Can you understand me?" Yi Fei asked. The little girl nodded vigorously. Her tender fingers continued to point in the same direction as before. This time, Yi Fei understood what the little girl meant. His expression was a little strange. "You want me to take you somewhere?" This time, the little girl nodded happily. Then she let go of her arms and looked at Yi Fei expectantly. Yi Fei was also curious. Anyway, he had nothing to do now. Looking at this Ganoderma doll, it didn't look like it could hurt him. Immediately, Yi Fei decided to follow the Lingji doll to take a look. To be honest, Yi Fei was very interested in this kind of life form that was formed from the essence of heaven and earth. Hence, Yi Fei stood up and looked in the direction the Ganoderma spirit was pointing at. "All right, lead the way. Let's go and take a look together." Bang! Before he could finish his sentence, the Ganoderma lucidum behind him tripped over his right foot and fell flat on his back. His little face couldn't help but become even redder, and his face revealed an aggrieved and pained expression. Only then did Yi Fei see that there was a very deep wound on the little girl's leg. It was obvious that she had been injured by her spirit. Thinking back to what the seventh prince and the others had said, Yi Fei immediately understood that the seventh prince and the others must have discovered the transformed Lingji doll and wanted to snatch it. They even didn't hesitate to injure the Lingji doll. These bastards, I should have broken their arms and legs just now. Yi Fei's face flashed with anger. Even if the Lingji doll wasn't human, she was still a little girl. What should we do now? You can't walk. Why don't I grab you and fly over? You could just be in charge of pointing the way. Yi Fei thought of an idea. He saw that this little girl's ponytail was quite easy to grab, so he prepared to grab it. Of course, this caused the little girl to protest. Bam, bam, bam. The little girl shouted loudly in protest. She even threw mud and rocks at Yi Fei's face. At the same time, she carefully protected her ponytail and angrily prevented Yi Fei from grabbing it. Yi Fei's expression immediately turned ugly. If it wasn't for the fact that the person in front of him was an injured 3 or 4-year-old girl, he would definitely be angry with her. If you don't let me grab it, then how are we going to get there? Both parties were in a deadlock for a moment. Seeing that the little girl was really unwilling to be grabbed by the head, Yi Fei couldn't think of a better idea. We can't possibly find a rope and tie you up. Hearing this, the little girl immediately rolled her eyes at Yi Fei. This made Yi Fei even more puzzled. She was clearly very afraid and wary of him just a moment ago. Why did the little girl suddenly become very assured of him after a short while? Could it be because I chased away the seventh prince and the others and saved her? Yi Fei thought to himself. The little girl also bit her fingers in distress. She grabbed the ponytail on her head and thought for a moment. Then, she looked at Yi Fei with disdain and stretched out her arms. What do you mean? Yi Fei grabbed his head and didn't understand. The little girl angrily rolled her eyes. She hurriedly and seriously made a few more stretching actions. In the end, seeing that Yi Fei still didn't understand, the little girl finally gave up. She felt very wronged and jumped onto Yi Fei's body and made another stretching action. Only then did Yi Fei understand the little girl's plan. She actually wanted him to carry her. So I forget it. I'll carry her then. If we delay any longer, the seventh prince and his group will probably call for reinforcements. Yi Fei awkwardly hugged the Ganoderma doll on his body. Needless to say, although this little girl looked quite small, she was quite heavy. With one look, one could tell that she was a super spiritual medicine that had grown for countless years. If you were to sell her, the entire Tiamu continent would probably go crazy. At least, Yi Fei had never heard of a spiritual medicine that could transform into a living creature. Big sister, that brat is just ahead. We followed the Ganoderma doll here and lost our tracks. Needless to say, the Ganoderma doll must have been captured by that brat. Big sister, you must avenge me. Not long after Yi Fei left, a large group of young geniuses rushed over like a swarm of bees. They were the strongest youths in the vicinity of the Heavenly King City. Originally, as usual, everyone had come to the Southern Mountains to train in preparation for the Earth ranking. Who would have thought that someone would discover a Ganoderma that could transform into a living creature in the Southern Mountains? Such a precious treasure was definitely more precious than any sacred tool. Even if a martial monarch heard about it, he might come over to fight for it. The young geniuses who discovered the Ganoderma doll immediately changed their goal. Instead of killing the vicious beasts, they started working together to capture the Ganoderma doll. Among this group of young geniuses, the seventh prince was not the leader. The real leader was a woman. She was the eldest daughter of the Northern Heavenly King, Beigong Chun. The Northern Heavenly King had a total of 7 children. Besides the 3 who had died in battle, the remaining 4 were Chun Yu, Feng, and Lei. For example, the 7th prince, who had a conflict with Yi Fei, was the youngest, Beigong Lei. However, among the 4 children of the Northern Heavenly King, Beigong Chun was still the strongest. Not only was Beigong Chun strong, but she was also very beautiful. Therefore, she attracted a large number of young geniuses to gather around her. However, Baigong Chun had never taken any men seriously. Baigong Chun only had one goal in life, and that was to surpass her father, the Northern Heavenly King. She wanted to become the first female Heavenly King in Bayong country and the entire northern region. Then, she would be able to trample countless men under her feet. Therefore, when she discovered the Ganoderma doll in the southern mountains in the form of a little girl, Baigong Chun was undoubtedly extremely excited. When she heard the seventh prince report that the Ganoderma doll might have been captured by the disciples of the Taishan sacred ground, Baigong Chun's beautiful face could not help but reveal a faint trace of coldness. Seventh brother, where is the disciple of the Taishan sacred ground that you mentioned? Why don't I see him? Baigong Chun looked at the empty grass and stared coldly at the seventh prince. The seventh prince could not help but shudder. He was not even afraid of his own father, but he was afraid of his sister, Baigong Chun. Big sister, I don't know either. Maybe he knew that I went to get help and escape from the southern mountains in advance. Escape from the southern mountains? How is that possible? All the geniuses who come here to hunt must stay for 10 days. If they leave the southern mountains after 10 days, they will be treated as deserters. Even you and I will be killed by the 200,000 soldiers of the southern mountains barracks. Baigong Lei, when will you grow up and not disappoint me and your father? Baigong Chun stared at the seventh prince sternly. The seventh prince lowered his head in shame and said with a sad face, Big sister, I was wrong, okay? Big sister, don't blame seventh brother. I know where that guy went. There's still the scent of a stranger here. My spiritual nose can track him down. In the grass, a girl as beautiful as Baigong Chun bent down to pick up a piece of cloth and sniffed it. Then, she threw it on the ground in disgust. The scent of men is really stinky. Even from 10 miles away, I can smell their stench. Chapter 466. Another ancient beast seal chased after him. Baigong Chun didn't care if there was anything wrong with her second sister's words. Right now, there was only one thought in her mind, and that was to find the transformation Lingji. Such a spiritual item would definitely greatly increase her talent and aptitude. It was even possible for her to break through to the heaven grade. How could Baigong Chun let go of such a treasure? How could the young geniuses present let go of it? Especially now that the Earth ranking was changing, any treasure that could increase one's strength was worth fighting for with all their might. Big sister, follow me. I'll bring you to him. Baigong, you sniffed the air and quickly found the direction Yifei left in. Little sister, are you really going to such a place? Yifei followed the direction the little girl was pointing in. After walking for less than an hour, he clearly felt that something was wrong. The little girl was actually going to the deepest part of the South Mountain. It was also the place where a large number of Martial King-level vicious beasts resided. This was no joke. Yifei had no problem dealing with ordinary vicious beasts. However, if he were to face the siege of a large group of Martial King-level vicious beasts, not to mention himself, even an invincible Martial King like the Northern Heavenly King would have to flee in defeat. Yeah, when the little girl saw that Yifei had the intention to retreat, she quickly nodded her head. Her finger was still pointing in the direction of the deepest part of the South Mountain. In the end, she looked at Yifei pitifully with her big teary eyes and pointed at her injured leg. This time, the little girl didn't need to make too many gestures. Yifei understood that the little girl meant that her injury could only be healed in the deepest part of the South Mountain. What else could Yifei say? Forget it. I'll help you to the end. Who's the only one who thinks of my sister when I see you? Sigh. I wonder if she's doing well in the Star Moon Holy Land. Yifei shook his head and continued to go deeper. At the same time, he was careful to avoid encountering powerful Martial King-level vicious beasts. However, Yifei realized that he was worrying too much. For some unknown reason, the aura of vicious beasts was extremely rare in the depths of the South Mountain, which should be a place where vicious beasts resided. Along the way, Yifei even saw many corpses of martial king-level ferocious beasts, as well as shattered mountains and sunken lands. These were clearly traces of a great battle. Moreover, this great battle was quite terrifying. On the ground, Yifei could still vaguely see a mountain-like palm print on the ground. He could also see huge and neat gullies that seemed to have been cut by swords and sabers. This is absolutely not something a martial king-level battle can cause. Could it be that in the depths of the southern mountains, there are still martial lord-level fierce beasts? Squeak, squeak. Seeing that Yifei was about to flinch again, the girl made some gestures to comfort Yifei. It took Yifei a while to figure it out. The girl made a gesture of fighting with her hands. Then, with a frightened look on her face, the two people fighting in her hands suddenly left in a hurry. You're saying that there were martial lord experts fighting here, and as they fought, they suddenly left on their own? Which Wu Jun is that? Are they having fun? Yifei could not understand what the two title battle pet warriors at the level of Wu Jun were thinking. The girl didn't explain. When Yifei didn't notice, there was a glint of deep fear in her eyes. As a matter of fact, the two people fighting were not Wu Jun at the level of title battle pet warriors. They were mighty warriors who were even more powerful than Wu Jun. The two mighty warriors were fighting fiercely for the girl's ownership. Suddenly, they sensed the presence of the Demon King. The two mighty warriors thought there was a martial king. They also noticed the little girl and wanted to fight for her. They were so scared that they hurriedly left and ran for their lives without looking back. Of course, Yifei didn't know that. He just felt that those powerful warriors at the 12th level of the martial saint realm were too bored. Why did they come here to fight for fun? Just as Yifei was thinking about it, the little girl in his arms suddenly shouted happily. Her finger kept pointing in a certain direction. Not until then did Yifei realize that they had reached the deepest part of Nanshan Hill. Fortunately, they didn't run into any vicious beasts along the way. He looked at the place the girl was pointing at curiously. It was a huge natural cave. Unfortunately, half of it had been smashed by the two powerful warriors. There was even a dead body of vicious beasts at the 10th level of the Martial King realm buried under the mountain. Yifei could only feel the power of the vicious beast through the qi and blood it was emitting. Seeing that Yifei was staring at the dead body of the vicious beasts, the girl was anxious. She pointed at the gap in the cave and pulled Yifei's ear with the other hand. Yifei could only walk over with a gloomy face. At the same time, he was very curious. He found that the gap was not big enough. It was only big enough for him to carry the girl. However, this was not a problem for Yifei. Yifei directly smashed a fist over, smashing out a gap that could allow a person to pass through. Yifei carried the little girl and walked in. Immediately, he felt a shocking wave of spirit qi rush towards him. What a shocking fluctuation of spiritual qi. There is a sacred level spirit spring hidden here. Yifei looked at the huge spirit spring in the cave, dumbfounded. This spirit spring was different from the one he found with Third Master Shang. The spirit spring of the Constellation sect was almost dried up. However, the spirit spring here was not only full of spiritual qi, but also seemed to have room to evolve. Could it be that the two Wu Jun experts were fighting over this spirit spring? But why did they stop fighting for no reason? They did not even take the spirit spring. Yifei felt that the two Wu Jun experts were really strange. The girl did not want Yifei to carry her. Instead, she jumped over Yifei's body and jumped into the spirit spring. Suck! As the little girl opened her mouth to breathe, a large amount of spirit qi was automatically sucked into her mouth. At the same time, the little girl formed seals with her hands and quickly mobilized the spirit qi around her. It was obvious that she was cultivating a very exquisite martial art. Yifei's mouth was agape. He realized that the little girl he had met was too strange. Plants that took form should not have high intelligence. But the little girl in front of him was not only rich in emotions, she could even cultivate in martial arts. Now, what is that over there? Why does it look like the ancient beast mark that Wangbai gave me? Yi Fei looked at the girl, and his gaze was suddenly attracted by a strange mark on the wall of the cave. Upon closer inspection, it was actually 70% similar to the ancient beast mark on his shoulder. Yi Fei recognized it at a glance. It was actually another ancient beast mark. It was different from the beast mark that was branded on his body. The beast mark in front of him gave Yi Fei the feeling that it was branded on the entire cave. Chapter 467. Killing the Emperor's Realm Empty Fist. Yi Fei had always been curious about the ancient beast mark. Now that he suddenly saw a similar ancient beast mark, he could not hold back his curiosity. Seeing that the little girl was still cultivating in the spirit spring with a red face, Yi Fei didn't want to disturb her. Therefore, he walked to the front of the ancient beast mark and carefully examined it. In the end, he didn't find anything unusual. It was just a bunch of strange symbols. The beast mark did not have any reaction when he used the martial artist's will. But the more it was like this, the more curious Yi Fei became. Seeing that his martial artist was unable to detect what the beast mark contained, Yi Fei carefully touched the beast mark with his hand. In the end, he still did not find anything unusual. Strange. Could it be that this beast mark is fake? Or has the energy inside been lost, and I cannot sense it? Ever since he obtained the ancient beast mark from Wangbai, after returning to the sacred land, Yi Fei had been diligent. He searched for information about the ancient beast mark according to the records in the sacred land. Before the martial era, the Tianwu continent had a long period of desolation. In this era, human martial arts had not yet flourished. It was an era of vicious beasts, demonic beasts, savage beasts, and desolate beasts. The ancient beast mark was gradually researched by humans in order to protect themselves and to fight against the powerful, vicious beasts. If humans wanted to become stronger, there was only one way. That was to form the beast mark, assimilate the blood of beasts, and study the various killing techniques of the vicious beasts and demonic beasts. Relying on this kind of exploration bit by bit, in ancient times, a very glorious civilization of beast marks and talismans was born. Until, for some unknown reason, the beast marks and talismans suddenly disappeared. Martial arts gradually rose, and the strength of ancient beast marks was gradually forgotten by warriors. Now that an ancient beast mark had appeared in front of him, it would be a lie to say that he was not moved. Seeing that ordinary methods would not work, Yi Fei decided to be ruthless. With a thought, he activated the power of the ancient beast mark on his shoulder. Immediately, Yi Fei's skin was covered with a layer of mysterious scales. Looking at the scales on his palm that were harder than dragon scales, Yi Fei smiled bitterly. He also tried to press his palm on the ancient beast mark. Roar! A huge beast roar suddenly entered Yi Fei's mind, and a magnificent scene appeared in front of him. Countless beasts were roaring, and thousands of spiritual lights tore through the sky and blasted toward an ancient man standing in the sky. This person was dressed in animal skin and looked like an ancient ancestor. He ate raw meat and drank blood, but he also possessed a terrifying strength. Facing the attacks of tens of thousands of beasts, the man looked down coldly. He also roared and punched out. Boom! That fist was too terrifying. Yi Fei only saw that the man's fist light actually broke through the light balls formed by tens of thousands of spiritual lights and smashed downwards. Tens of thousands of vicious beasts were destroyed at the same time. Of course, the man's body in the air was also destroyed at the same time. Only his loud laughter made Yi Fei's ears ring. Ha ha! Myriad Beast Emperor, if I can kill the foundation of your beast today, even if I die, I can die in peace. As long as the flame is not extinguished, the world will be passed down forever. Future generations, do not let down my slaying Emperor Realm Empty Fist. Remember, the man's voice gradually fell silent, but his voice still echoed in Yi Fei's ears. At the same time, a mysterious message was imprinted in Yi Fei's mind through his palm. Slaying Emperor Realm empty fist? These ancient ancestors are really powerful. They're not emperors, but they have the confidence to create a fist technique that can kill emperors. How great and wise are they? After feeling the message in his mind, Yi Fei knew that the ancient beast mark in the cave was left behind by the man before he fought with an emperor-level vicious beasts. The Nanshan region was once an ancient battlefield. Back then, the vicious beasts had run amok, and the human race had suffered unspeakably. Countless people had become food for the vicious beasts and had been slaughtered wantonly. The emperor-level powerhouses of the beast race, in particular, had slaughtered people wherever they went. They had almost killed the human race to the point of extinction. Unfortunately, martial arts had not been popular back then, and the human race had no martial emperors. They simply could not withstand the attacks of the vicious beasts. Therefore, some human-wise people had gone against the heavens and created taboo martial arts that could kill emperor-level vicious beasts. For example, the Killer Emperor's realm empty fist that Yi Fei had obtained was a taboo move created by a human powerhouse in the past to perish together with his opponent. As long as the empty fist was used, no matter how strong the opponent was or what treasures they had to protect themselves, the empty fist could guarantee a 100% hit. The price to pay was that the opponent's attack would also hit the user 100% of the time. If the user did not have a life-saving trump card, it was basically a move that would kill both the user and the opponent. Although a great emperor was terrifying, facing hundreds and thousands of human powerhouses who were willing to risk their lives to use the empty fist at the same time, not to mention a great emperor vicious beast, even a divine beast would be defeated on the spot. The empty fist is good stuff. With it, doesn't that mean that I can now ignore the opponent's defense and injure them 100% of the time? Of course, the premise is that I can also withstand the opponent's attack without dying. Yi Fei sat down cross-legged and quickly comprehended the essence of the empty fist. This was a unique move that could be used in a desperate fight against the enemy. At first glance, it looked very weak, but Yi Fei had a feeling that if he used this fist technique correctly, it would definitely be a super powerful fist technique that would not lose to a great emperor's martial technique. According to the current martial technique evaluation, it was at least an upper emperor level martial technique. Not bad. I was just worried that the Sky Demon Kill was a little weak, but I ended up with an emperor level taboo martial technique and a saint level spirit spring. If I absorb that saint level spirit spring, I might be able to break through to the 7th level of the martial king realm. After comprehending the contents of the ancient beast seal, Yi Fei hurriedly turned his head in high spirits and planned to soak in the saint-level spirit spring as well. However, when he turned his head, Yi Fei almost vomited blood. He saw that the huge spirit spring had been completely absorbed by the little girl in less than an hour. Yi Fei was depressed. Even if it was healing, the consumption was too shocking. There's no more saint-level spirit spring? Yi Fei looked at the little girl with murderous eyes. The little girl nodded timidly. She was a little frightened by Yi Fei's current appearance. Suddenly, she sensed something and pointed anxiously at the entrance of the cave, looking nervously at Yi Fei. Yi Fei obviously knew what she was nervous about. With his strong senses, he had already sensed that there were people rapidly approaching from outside. Why don't you hurry up and escape? I'll help you block them for a while. Yi Fei looked at the little girl and said. In the end, he still could not bear to kill a little girl who had already transformed into a complete human form. The little girl looked around awkwardly. Other than the entrance of the cave, there was no space to escape. She immediately looked at Yi Fei with a dark expression. Don't look at me. I have no choice. If you don't escape and are discovered, even if I don't capture you, others will capture you. Yi Fei also looked at the little girl with a dark expression. What was this Ganoderma baby doing? She had already recovered from her injuries, but she still did not have the ability to escape. Why don't you suffer for a while? I'll dig a hole and bury you first. After I send them away, I'll dig you out. Chapter 468. Haru Bei Gong Bam Bam Bam. As a result of Yi Fei's words, the little girl threw mud at him again. Yi Fei was completely depressed. He looked at the little girl and said, "That's enough. If you hit me again, I'll catch you and eat you up." She didn't say anything. She only looked at Yi Fei with her big teary eyes. It gave Yi Fei a headache. Even if he could do it, he couldn't bring himself to do it. "Fine, I'm afraid of you. From now on, hide by my side. I'll see if I can help you get rid of the people outside." Yi Fei compromised. The little girl shook her head vigorously and made a no gesture. Then she pointed timidly at Yi Fei's shoulder and made a hug gesture. Yi Fei's face darkened. Finally, he hugged the little girl again and was about to ask her what was going on. Whoosh! The little girl suddenly used her finger to point at the ancient beast mark on Yi Fei's shoulder. Something magical happened. The beast mark actually tore open a space. The demon rune inside trembled and turned into a stream of light, sucking the little girl in. Yi Fei was very shocked. The little girl actually entered his ancient beast mark. What Yi Fei didn't expect was that the ancient beast mark had been following him for so long. But he didn't realize that there was a mysterious space inside the beast mark. At this moment, the little girl stayed in the space created by the ancient beast mark. She seemed to be very happy. She waved at Yi Fei and fell to the ground, snoring loudly. Green leaves wrapped around her. Following the little girl's breathing, the ancient beast mark on Yi Fei's shoulder also underwent a magical change. Other than the demon rune, the image of a spiritual herb was also imprinted. Yi Fei suddenly decided that the next time he saw Wang Bai, he would beat him to death. He wanted to see what this guy had given him. His entire body was covered in scales, which made Yi Fei very depressed. Now, he was even more unlucky. Even grass had grown out. "Big sister, that stinky man is hiding inside." I felt that the spirit chi inside was very strong just now. Why can I smell it now? The person who spoke was Bei Gongyu. The person she admired the most was her big sister, Bei Gongchun. The person she hated the most was all kinds of men. Her nose was simply too sharp, and she could always smell things that others couldn't. This made Bei Gongyu the most terrifying tracking expert in the Heavenly King's residence. Since she said that Yi Fei was inside, then there was no doubt about it. "Do you want to come out on your own? Or do you want me to send someone in to drag you out?" Bei Gongchun nodded at his sister. When he looked at the cave, a cold glint flashed in his eyes. She paused for a moment. Seeing that Yi Fei had no intention of coming out, Bei Gongchun revealed her identity. "I am Bei Gongchun, the first princess of the Heavenly King's residence." "Big sister, he's just a stinky man from a small holy land." "Why did you tell him so much?" Bei Gongyu was confused. Bei Gongchun had always been very domineering towards men. The surrounding young talents also looked at Bei Gongchun in confusion. Bei Gongchun didn't explain anything. Others didn't know that as the first princess of the Heavenly King's residence, Bei Gongchun naturally participated in many important matters of the Heavenly King's residence. For example, the king of Northern Ocean Kingdom had actually sent someone personally to invite Taishian's sanctuary to participate in the Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking contest. He hadn't done it through the Northern Heavenly King as usual. This, of course, had attracted the attention of the Heavenly King's residence. After asking around, the news that Heavenly Ean's sect had been annihilated and that Sword Maniac Elder had entered the way of Sword Sage had spread to the Heavenly King's residence. Bei Gongchun also knew about this, and she had her scruples. Hence, she had been courteous. Otherwise, when facing an ordinary holy land, as the first princess of the Northern Heavenly King, she wouldn't have taken them seriously. Inside the cave, Yi Fei nodded. He felt that Bei Gongchun wasn't ordinary. She was at least much more powerful than the seventh prince. "So it's the first princess of the Northern Heavenly King. I wonder why your highness is looking for me?" Knowing that he couldn't avoid it, Yi Fei walked out calmly and looked at Bei Gongchun, who was leading the group. He first noticed Bei Gongchun's appearance and praised her in his heart. What a beauty! When he saw Bei Gongchun's strength, Yi Fei's heart suddenly jumped. LV9, Martial King Realm? At that moment, he felt a sense of fear and danger in his heart. Originally, Yi Fei had thought that he would be able to break through to LV6 Martial King Realm in a few years' time. However, Bei Gongchun, who was only a few years older than him, was already a LV9 Martial King realm. At that moment, Yi Fei realized how terrifying the geniuses on the Earthboard were. Boy, don't talk nonsense here. Where did you hide the Ganoderma doll? You'd better hand it over to us quickly. Otherwise, the Heavenly King's residence will bring troops to raze Taishian's sanctuary to the ground. The seventh prince stood out and shouted at Yi Fei. Loser, don't you understand my words? Who gives you the right to speak here? Get lost. You're an eyesore. Yi Fei did not even look at the seventh prince. The seventh prince was so angry that his finger, which was pointing at Yi Fei, trembled. As the son of the Heavenly King, even an LV10 Martial King realm cultivator had to curry favor with him. However, Yi Fei actually said that he was an eyesore. How could the seventh prince tolerate this? I'll reward whoever can teach this boy a lesson. The seventh prince turned around and looked at the group of young geniuses. Seeing that the seventh prince was being humiliated, a young man with a halberd walked out from the crowd and said in a loud voice, Seventh prince, I'll do it. I'm Qin Chuan. I'm here to see what a North Sea country bumpkin is capable of. Qin Chuan deliberately emphasized the word country bumpkin. It was obvious that he looked down on Yi Fei and Taishian's sanctuary. Ha! Hearing Qin Chuan's words, many young geniuses in the crowd laughed together, especially the seventh prince, who laughed especially loudly. Wei Gongchun looked at all of this coldly and had no intention of stopping them. She also wanted to see how strong Yi Fei was. Qin Chuan, teach this stinking man a lesson. Wei Gongyu was already waving her fists and cheering for Qin Chuan. Ha! Second princess, just watch. Today I, Qin Chuan, will beat this country bumpkin to a pulp. Bang! Without any warning, Yi Fei, who was standing in the distance, had already appeared in front of Qin Chuan. His iron fist rumbled and smashed into Qin Chuan's face. Qin Chuan let out a blood-curdling scream as blood flowed from his nose. Together with his halberd, he was sent flying and collided with the seventh prince. The two of them rolled on the ground like gourds. Beat me until I'm looking for my teeth on the ground? You're such an arrogant piece of trash. Using a halberd is a disgrace to the flying generals. I'll return your teeth to you. Ha! He raised his hand and grabbed two broken teeth. Yi Fei threw them to the ground. Everyone was shocked to find that Qin Chuan, who was one of the best among them, had two of his front teeth broken by Yi Fei in a single move. Feeling the strange gazes around him, Qin Chuan, who was lying on the ground, was embarrassed and angry. He quickly stood up and raised his halberd, ready to fight to the death with Yi Fei. Humph, country bumpkin, I, Qin Chuan, will fight you to the death today. Qin Chuan, enough. You're not his match. From the crowd, a man who resembled Qin Chuan walked out and stopped Qin Chuan. But, big brother, no buts. No one can bully my Qin family and come out unscathed. Qin Bing of the Qin family is here to learn from you. Chapter 469. Becoming famous in one battle, Yi Fei felt a sense of pressure when he saw Qin Bing. When he saw the light in Qin Bing's eyes, he was even more certain of his guess. Qin Bing was an expert. The young talents from the Heavenly King's mansion were not simple. At least in the North Sea, Yi Fei rarely met an opponent like Qin Bing. His fighting spirit was immediately aroused by Qin Bing. Let's fight, as you wish. Qin Bing's eyes suddenly condensed into two bright sword radiances, which pierced through the air and stabbed toward Yi Fei. It's the eye sword. Qin Bing is using a sword. Great. I haven't met a sword expert for a long time. Today I can have a good fight. Boom. Yi Fei's eyes suddenly became sharp. He also condensed two sword radiances, which collided with Qin Bing's sword radiances. Qin Bing's body couldn't help but tremble. There was also a piercing pain in his eyes. You're also using a sword? Qin Bing felt that he had met his match. The surrounding young talents were also very surprised. This guy is using a sword? I've never heard of any famous sword skills in the Taishian Holy Ground. Even Nan Ruofeng used his fists. At this time, the news of the destruction of the Heavenly Een sect and the death of Nan Ruofeng had not spread. These young talents were surprised to see Yi Fei using a sword. No, the Taishan Holy Ground also has powerful sword skills. Is he from the Sword Peak? Wei Gongchun looked at Yi Fei and secretly speculated about Yi Fei's identity. No matter who he is, this stinky man dares to go against you. He deserves a good beating. Qin Bing, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and defeat him. Bei Gongyu began to cheer for Qin Bing again. Kill. Whirlwind and clouds. Collapse of heaven and earth. After Qin Bing recovered from a shock, he did not take Yi Fei seriously. After all, he was an expert of the LV6 Martial King realm. Even Nan Ruofeng had to look up to him, let alone an unknown disciple from the Taishan Holy Ground. Rumble. A tornado appeared out of nowhere on the ground. Upon closer inspection, it was actually a huge gale formed by the sword Qi, which was being pushed forward by Qin Bing. Spiral sword essence? Interesting. It's a pity that your sword is too slow and scattered. A real sword doesn't have too many fancy moves. It stabs when it needs to and slashes when it needs to, just like me. Boom! Yi Fei formed a sword finger with his right hand. Without even looking at the whirlwind in front of him, his sword finger had already formed a shocking sword shadow that could split mountains and split the earth. The whirlwind in front of him was instantly split into pieces, revealing the shocked expression of Qin Bing behind him. Enlightened Sword Heart. You actually comprehended the Enlightened Sword Heart? Qin Bing was in disbelief. Yi Fei did not use a sword. He only used a finger sword to shatter his attack. Could it be that you haven't learned Sword Heart Illumination yet? That shouldn't be the case. It's quite simple. Yi Fei looked at the emerald green longsword in Qin Bing's hand in puzzlement. Sword Heart Illumination is simple? When Qin Bing heard this, he suddenly had the urge to vomit blood. The young geniuses present also looked at Yi Fei as if they were looking at a monster. He was a LV6 Martial King, Realm Martial King, and was still so young. How could he have comprehended Sword Heart Illumination? Since when did the Taishan Holy Ground have such a monster? Maybe Qin Bing will be defeated this time. A young genius muttered in a low voice. Nonsense. How can my brother be defeated? Brother, help me take revenge. The Qin clan will win. Qin Chuan ignored his two front teeth and shouted loudly. Hearing Qin Chuan shout, Yi Fei sneered disdainfully. Is it useful to shout loudly? In front of absolute strength, it's useless to shout until your throat breaks. Devouring sword essence. Yi Fei roared and suddenly pointed his finger sword at Qin Bing. A huge sword light whizzed out from his fingertip and quickly turned into a huge black hole, swallowing Qin Bing. Damn it, spiral sword essence. Break this black hole for me. Qin Bing shouted angrily. Suddenly, circles of sword ripples appeared on his body and rotated continuously. In the end, they formed a huge spiral whirlwind that pierced toward the black hole released by Yi Fei. It actually temporarily blocked the black hole from advancing. Yi Fei's face was also filled with surprise. He now knew that the young geniuses of Heavenly King City were indeed worthy of their reputation. They were all very powerful, especially the spiral sword essence that Qin Bing had comprehended. The sword Qi rotated continuously like a drill, which could greatly increase his attack power. If this continued, he might even drill a hole in the black hole. Of course, Yi Fei would not let this happen. Let's see how much of my sword essence you can resist. Devouring sword essence. Yi Fei's face was cold. He suddenly increased his devouring sword essence from 50% to 60%. Considering the uniqueness of Qin Chuan's spiral sword essence, Yi Fei's black hole suddenly shrunk rapidly. Not only did its power not decrease, but its power was also compressed to an extreme. Qin Bing, who was trying his best to pierce the black hole, suddenly felt the pressure increase. The spiral sword essence in his hand could no longer hold on and was completely swallowed by the compressed black hole. Boom! Qin Bing, who had lost his sword essence, could no longer resist the power of the black hole. His body was pierced by the black hole, and he fell to the ground, panting heavily. You've lost. Before the black hole completely swallowed Qin Bing, Yi Fei waved his hand and dispersed his devouring sword essence. You're not going to kill me? Qin Bing was very surprised. His sword essence had already been shattered. If Yi Fei wanted to kill him, it would be a piece of cake. I hurt your brother. It's only right for you to stand up for him. Why should I kill you? Yi Fei looked at Qin Bing strangely. Qin Bing was stunned when he heard this. Then, he looked deeply at Yi Fei. He stood up and bowed his head helplessly. I've lost. Qin Chuan apologized quickly. After accepting his defeat, Qin Bing looked at Qin Chuan and ordered. Qin Chuan's face was red with shame. Although he was unwilling, he still bowed his head to Yi Fei. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have looked down on the Taishian sacred ground. I admit now that the Taishian sacred ground is indeed very strong. Forget it. As long as you don't provoke me, it's fine. Yi Fei didn't make things difficult for the two brothers. He could see that the Qin brothers weren't bad people. They were just a little bit competitive. At this moment, the gazes of the surrounding young geniuses towards Yi Fei had changed. Qin Chuan was one thing, but Qin Bing was an expert who had rushed into the top 50 of the Earth list. In the end, he was still defeated by Yi Fei. Then, if nothing unexpected happened, Yi Fei would definitely have a spot on the Earth list. Who's this guy? In the Taishian sacred ground, apart from the Martial Venerables group on the Earth list and Nan Ruofeng, we haven't heard of any powerful people from the sacred ground. Yeah, no wonder my father always told me not to underestimate the heroes of the world. This guy hid his strength really well. It's one thing for him to have strength. It's another thing for him to offend the eldest princess. Although these young geniuses were afraid of Yi Fei's strength, they didn't intend to retreat. They still vaguely blocked Yi Fei at the entrance of the cave. Qin Bing cast a helpless look at Yi Fei and returned to the crowd with his brother Qin Chuan. Bei Gongyu immediately went over and scolded him. Useless thing. How could you lose? Chapter 470. Invitation from the Heavenly King's Mansion. Forget it. You don't have to explain. None of the men in this world are useful. Indeed, in this world, we women are the ones who make the decisions. Bei Gongyu did not wait for the brothers to explain. She had already found a very reasonable reason. Then, she walked past the crowd and walked towards Yi Fei. She hooked her white and tender little finger. Stinky man over there, you are very strong. Do you dare to exchange blows with me? As Bei Gongyu spoke, an aura surged out from her body. It was the aura of a LV-7 Martial King. Yi Fei looked at her. She was younger than him. She was already an LV-7 Martial King. His face could not help but reveal a hint of seriousness. Although he could kill a LV-10 Martial King with the help of a sage weapon, it was still due to the sage weapon. If he really relied on his own strength, he could still fight against an LV-7 Martial King. Ordinary Martial Kings. But he had never fought against a heavenly king's daughter like Bei Gongyu. If you want to fight, I will fight. Yi Fei did not treat Bei Gongyu differently just because she was a woman. He was still full of fighting spirit. He also wanted to see how big the gap was between him and these geniuses. All right, since you have some backbone, I won't kill you. I will beat you half to death and leave you to big sister. Bei Gongyu stared coldly at Yi Fei. Bei Gongchun, who had been silent all this time, suddenly looked at Yi Fei with an extremely serious expression. Others might not be able to sense it, but Bei Gongchun could clearly sense an aura from Yi Fei that even she was afraid of. This was the intuition of all experts. It was obvious that Yi Fei was very strong. At least, he was much stronger than Yi Fei had shown his strength. Xiao Yu, come back. Bei Gongchun called her sister back. Big sister, why? Bei Gongyu did not understand. You are not his match. Bei Gongchuan's tone was very calm, but made the hearts of the young geniuses tremble violently. What? Even second sister is not his match? Is he really that strong? The seventh prince was unwilling to accept this. The surrounding young sky prides also looked at Yi Fei curiously. Yi Fei's gaze was still very calm. He stared at Bei Gongchun and said, You finally can't hold it in any longer and want to make a move against me. Impudent. How dare you speak to my elder sister like that? Bei Gongyu jumped out again and glared at Yi Fei. Yi Fei couldn't be bothered with such an unreasonable woman. Little Yu, step back. With his strength, he does indeed have the right to speak to me like this. Bei Gongyu stopped Bei Gongyu from messing around. Bei Gongyu was very surprised. Even though Yi Fei was strong, he was only a LV6 martial king. Such a genius was rare in the North Sea, but there were many in the powerful Beiyang country. There was no need for Bei Gongchun to be so polite to Yi Fei. Bei Gongyu didn't understand. The young Sky Prides present were also confused by what was happening. Only Yi Fei could vaguely guess from Bei Gongchun's attitude and the special status of the Heavenly King's mansion. The news that the old Master Jian had stepped onto the path of a sword sage must have been known by the Heavenly King's mansion, which made Bei Gongchun a little wary. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. Seeing that Bei Gongchun had no intention of making a move, Yi Fei planned to leave. It was not a pleasant thing to have grass growing on one's body. He planned to find a place where no one was around and kick the little girl out of the beast mark. Wait! Of course, Bei Gongchun wouldn't let Yi Fei leave so easily. This was not only related to the Lingji doll, but also the prestige of the Heavenly King's mansion. Hearing Bei Gongchun's voice, the surrounding young Sky Prides all stepped forward and completely surrounded Yi Fei. They all thought that Bei Gongchun was going to make a move. Are you trying to bully me? Yi Fei's face instantly turned cold. We're not bullying you. We're just taking back what belongs to us. The seventh prince still had some brains. He looked at his elder sister in a fawning manner. Bei Gongchun nodded and said in a low voice, Yi Fei, you're indeed very strong. Considering that you've received an invitation from the Heavenly King's mansion, you're also a guest of the Heavenly King's mansion. I shouldn't have gotten into a conflict with you. However, a treasure like the Lingji doll was discovered by us first. If you snatch it from us, aren't you looking down on the Heavenly King's mansion? What Lingji doll? What are you talking about? How could I possibly have such a thing on me? Yi Fei stopped in his tracks with a shocked expression. He would never admit that the Lingji doll was hidden on him. If he did, it would undoubtedly bring trouble upon himself. Yi Fei, I can't believe you with just one sentence. How about this? Do you dare to hold this conscience stone and loudly say that you didn't steal the Ganoderma doll and that it's not with you? Bei Gongchun wasn't so easily fooled. She took out a conscience stone and threw it at Yi Fei. As long as Yi Fei lied, the conscience stone would react. Yi Fei was very depressed. No matter how he looked at it, this stone looked like a lie detector from his previous life. However, he wasn't afraid of this thing. Yi Fei immediately picked up the conscience stone and said loudly, I never snatched the Lingji doll. There's definitely no Lingji doll in my spatial ring. Yi Fei secretly changed the concept. Anyway, he wasn't lying. He really didn't catch the little girl. It was the little girl who was thick-skinned and clung onto him. Similarly, he didn't put the little girl into his spatial ring. Originally, Yi Fei planned to just bury the little girl underground. The conscience stone didn't react. He's telling the truth. The seventh prince and the other young elites were dumbfounded. Bei Gongyu also had an expression of disbelief. Since he didn't catch it, then where did the Lingji doll go? You're asking me? If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first. Yi Fei threw away the conscience stone and planned to leave. Wait, Yi Fei, we were wrong previously. We misunderstood you. How about this? As compensation, I'd like to invite you to our Heavenly King residence as a guest. When the Earth Roll starts, you can also go to the Imperial Capital with everyone. What do you think? Bei Gongchun stopped Yi Fei with an apologetic look on her face. However, deep in her eyes, there was a flash of suspicion. Yi Fei knew that the Northern Heavenly King, Princess Royal, didn't completely believe him. She wanted to keep him by her side for a period of observation. Yi Fei hurriedly refused. That's not good. I still have something to do. I want to leave. However, Bei Gongchun wasn't someone to be trifled with. She revealed a rare smile and said, Haha, Yi Fei, this isn't up to you. Since you've received an invitation from the Heavenly King residence, you should know that the prodigy hunt will take place in Nanshan for at least 10 days. If you leave early, no matter how noble your status is, you will immediately be killed by the 200,000 soldiers in the barracks. Of course, if you have the ability to fight 200,000 soldiers alone, then pretend I didn't say anything. Begonyu was also full of smiles. At the same time, she secretly gave her elder sister a thumbs up. Chapter 471. Heading to the capital after witnessing Yi Fei's prowess. None of the young prodigies had any objections to Beigong Chun inviting Yi Fei to join the team. Only the siblings, Beigong Yu and Beigong Lei, didn't like Yi Fei. Seventh Prince Beigong, Lei hated Yi Fei for making him lose face. Beigong Yu was simply unhappy with her eldest sister's attitude towards Yi Fei. I really don't know what eldest sister is thinking. This Yi Fei isn't even as strong as me. If I were to make a move, I would definitely beat the crap out of him. Beigong Yu waved her fist at Yi Fei's back. She even flashed her cute little canine teeth. The other young prodigies couldn't help but look infatuated. But when they thought about how Beigong Yu hated men even more than Beigong Chun, these young prodigies became dejected. Knowing that the seventh prince and second princess didn't like Yi Fei, many of the young prodigies accepted Yi Fei. But not many were willing to come over and talk to Yi Fei. Beigong Chun also didn't have any intention of talking to Yi Fei. Seeing that the most suspicious Yi Fei had joined the team, she hurriedly ordered the young prodigies to spread out in all directions. They searched every inch of the ground in an attempt to find the Lingji doll. These young prodigies were indeed very capable. Some used telepathy, some used a compass, and there was even an expert in divination. They were all mumbling to themselves, trying to find clues about the Lingji doll. Of course, the best was still Beigong Yu. Even Yi Fei was surprised by how sensitive her nose was to spiritual energy. He realized that this unruly princess was a natural treasure hunter. She had practically found every path that Yi Fei and the Lingji doll had taken. Fortunately, the Lingji doll was now hidden in the beast mark on his shoulder, so was isolated from all auras. Otherwise, Yi Fei would be worried that he wouldn't be able to hide the fact that he had the Lingji doll on him. Brother Yi, don't worry. The princess asked you to come with us. She didn't mean to make things difficult for you. On the contrary, the eldest princess is very generous. She has already promised that as long as we catch the Ganoderma doll, everyone will have a share. At this moment, Qin Bing walked over and took the initiative to speak to Yi Fei. He was thankful that Yi Fei had shown mercy earlier. Yi Fei felt that Qin Bing was quite a nice person. At least he was not as arrogant as the other geniuses. Hence, he also tried to strike up a conversation with him. Brother Qin, do you know what happened here? Also, what's up with that Ganoderma doll? Brother Yi, you've asked the right person. If you want to talk about the appearance of the Ganoderma doll, you have to go back to 5 months ago. 2 earth-shattering almighties were fighting on the southern mountain. It said that they had a battle here, and then nothing was settled. In the end, when we went into the mountains to hunt, we happened to find the Ganoderma doll. I suspect that the 2 earth-shattering almighties were also here for this treasure. Qin Bing looked around and deliberately lowered his voice. After all, only a limited number of people knew about this. If Yi Fei hadn't shown mercy, he wouldn't have told Yi Fei. What? 2 earth-shattering almighties were fighting here? Yi Fei was taken aback. He had thought that there were only 2 Wu Juns fighting here. As it turned out, there were 2 earth-shattering almighties who had reached the 11th level of the martial saint realm. That's strange. Didn't they say that even the titled Wu Jun is hard to come by in the northern domain? Why are there earth-shattering almighties here? Yi Fei asked calmly. Qin Bing shook his head and said, Who knows? But my seniors speculated that the 2 earth-shattering almighties didn't seem to be from the northern domain. They must have fled here from other domains. 5 months ago, I don't know what happened to them. I heard that they fled from the northern domain again. Not to mention the Qin clan, even the Heavenly King's mansion was confused about this matter. Only Yi Fei's heart skipped a beat as he vaguely guessed something. 5 months ago, wasn't that when the Demon Emperor showed up? Could it be that the 2 earth-shattering almighties had fled in a panic after sensing the aura of the Demon Emperor? They did not even have the time to catch the Ganoderma doll. If that was the case, those 2 earth-shattering almighties were as timid as mice. Yi Fei shook his head with a strange look. He remained calm on the surface and tried his best to talk to Qin. Coincidentally, Qin was interested in befriending an expert like Yifei too. The two chatted and laughed along the way, thus they did not feel lonely at all. 10 days were gone fairly quickly. The genius hunt had almost come to an end. Beigong Chun and Beigong Yu wore unpleasant looks. The other young geniuses were feeling dejected too. Sister, we're so unlucky. We've searched the entire Nanshan, but we still can't find the Ganoderma doll. I bet she either left this place or flew into the sky. The seventh prince glanced at Beigong Chun with a long face. He and the other young geniuses had been running around for the past 10 days. Yifei gave them a sympathetic look too. Sigh, perhaps this is the will of the heavens. Pass down my orders. Let the army in. While all the powerful vicious beasts are dead, I want to clean up the Nanshan thoroughly. Beigong Chun's face was icy cold. She had finally encountered a spiritual item, but she had missed it. She was furious. Naturally, she vented her anger on the vicious beasts in the Nanshan. Just as Yifei and the others left, a large number of soldiers and horses had already charged into the Nanshan. They wanted to take advantage of the fact that the vicious beasts in the mountain were weak to completely eliminate the threat in Heavenly King City. It was only then that Yifei realized that the Heavenly King's residents had organized the genius hunt to allow everyone to spy on their enemies. After leaving the Nanshan, Beigong Chun nodded at Yifei. Yifei, we've troubled you these past few days. You can follow everyone back to the Heavenly King's residence now. Before the Earth leaderboard begins, the Heavenly King's residence will open the gate for you to head to the capital city. With that, Beigong Chun hurriedly left with Beigong Yu and Beigong Lei. However, they weren't heading in the direction of Heavenly King's city. Yifei felt a little strange. He asked Qin Bing beside him, why? Aren't the two princesses coming with us? Sigh, their statuses are different. How can the two princesses come with us? They will head to the capital city in advance to meet the king. After that, it will be the day for us young prodigies to participate in the Earth leaderboard. It was obvious that Qin Bing was disappointed with the two princesses' departure. Yifei looked at Qin Bing with a strange expression. Brother Qin, could it be that you? Hee, Brother Yi, don't say it out loud. It's fine as long as everyone understands. Qin Bing looked shyly at the departing Beigong Chun. Yifei felt a chill run down his spine. However, with Qin Bing by his side, his days in the Heavenly King's residence wouldn't be too boring. 10 days later, a melodious bell rang from within the Heavenly King's residence. A maid rushed over to report, My lords, the gate has opened. Please make your move. Are we finally heading to the capital city? I was ranked 107th on the Earth leaderboard last time. This time, I must enter the top 100. Haha, only the top 100? Brother Zheng, your goal is too small. My goal is to be in the top 90. Yifei and Qin Bing were speechless. What was the difference between being in the top 100 and being in the top 90? Then, the two of them stood up together. Brother Yi, please. Brother Qin, please. Chapter 472. Heaven's Pride, Clubhouse. The young geniuses of the Heavenly King residence knew their limits. After Beigong Yu and Beigong Chun left, the most powerful people here were Yifei and Qin Bing. They could only wait for Yifei and Qin Bing to enter the gate before the others could enter. Yifei and Qin Bing did not stand on ceremony. The two of them stepped into the gate and disappeared from Heavenly King City. The other young geniuses entered according to their strength and disappeared from Heavenly King City at the same time. After an unknown period of time, boom, the gate opened. Yifei walked out and realized that he had arrived at another area. This was the imperial capital of Beiyang country. It was like a creeping dragon entrenched on the ground, full of majestic and oppressive aura. In the depths of the imperial capital, Yifei could vaguely sense a terrifying aura. It was so oppressive that he could not breathe. Brother Yi, quickly descend to the ground. This is the aura of a titled martial lord. Without the permission of the country lord, no one is allowed to fly in the sky unless they obtain permission. Qin Bing explained to Yifei. Then, the two of them landed on the ground. The other young geniuses who had rushed over did the same. When they saw the imperial capital, many of them cheered happily. Ha ha ha, the imperial capital. It's been 3 years. I'm back again. This time, I must make a name for myself in the imperial capital. Save it. The imperial capital is full of experts. It's not that simple. Even if we break through to the martial king realm, we might become cannon fodder. Brother Qin, Brother Yi, everyone, my family has businesses in the imperial capital. I won't stand on ceremony. I'll take my leave first. It just so happens that I also have an elder in the imperial capital. Let's split up and meet again when the Earth Roll is held. Those who could participate in the Earth Roll were undoubtedly the best around Heavenly King City. Their families more or less had some connections in the imperial capital. Therefore, when they arrived, everyone dispersed and went to find their own connections. Qin Chuan walked to Qin Bing's side. Brother, let's go too. Qin Chuan, you go first. I still have a few friends to introduce to Brother Yi. If you're interested, you can come too. Qin Bing said to his brother. Qin Chuan shook his head gloomily. He glanced at Yifei unhappily and left with a cold snort. Yifei, my brother is just like that. Please don't mind him. Qin Bing was a little embarrassed. I'm fine. She's just a kid. It's all right for her to throw a tantrum. Yifei said understandingly. After all, he had knocked out 2 of Qin Chuan's front teeth. It would be abnormal if Qin Chuan was not angry. Dong. Hearing this, Qin Chuan, who was about to leave, almost fell to the ground. What child? You're even younger than me. Of course, Qin Chuan didn't dare to say this to Yifei. Tianjiao Guild Hall. This was the most famous place in the Northern Ocean Kingdom. Every time the Earth Leaderboard started, young geniuses from all over the world would hold a token and stay in the Guild Hall. Then, when the Earth Leaderboard started, they would go to the Imperial Palace together to participate in the competition. It was time for the Earth Leaderboard to be updated again. The originally deserted Tianjiao Guild Hall had become exceptionally lively. Young experts from all over the world had rushed over to participate in the Earth Leaderboard. Some of them were in groups of 3 to 5, while others were escorting them. Of course, most of them were lone warriors who had trained along the way. However, the rules for this year's Tianjiao Guild Hall had changed. In front of the Guild Hall, a sign was clearly erected. Only prodigies are allowed. When they saw this sign, many young experts who had rushed over were very indignant and started shouting at the Guild Hall. What's the meaning of this Tianjiao Guild Hall? We came all the way here to participate in the Earth Leaderboard. Why are the doors closed and we're not allowed to enter? Ha ha ha, just because you're all country bumpkins from small places. What kind of place do you think the imperial capital is? Do you think you can sneak in and slack off just by spending a few bucks and buying an Earth Leaderboard token? If you came here with such a goal, then get lost. Our imperial capital is not a place where any cat or dog can come and behave atrociously. Outside the guild hall, there was a large round table. A few young men dressed in luxurious clothes sat there with cold or arrogant expressions. They were drinking and laughing loudly while pointing disdainfully at the young men who had rushed over. This immediately infuriated all the young men present. One had to know that those who could participate in the Earth Leaderboard were not weak. Each of them was the strongest genius in their respective regions. The weakest of them was a level 10 martial honorable. Among them, there were many martial kings. Of course, they would not tolerate being rejected by the Tianjiao Inn, especially when they were blocked. No matter how they looked at it, they looked like playboys from the imperial capital. It's just a few playboys from the imperial capital. If I want to go in, do you think you can stop me? A majestic young man wearing a bamboo hat walked out from the crowd. His tone was cold and indifferent. The scariest thing was that he was wearing a beast skin. The aura he emitted was faintly filled with a strong smell of blood. This immediately lifted the spirits of the young men who had rushed over. Haha, it's the barbarian robe guest. I know him. On the way here, I saw with my own eyes that he killed a level 1 martial king vicious beast with only the strength of his flesh. Just the strength of his flesh. Is he a powerful body cultivator? Many young experts revealed fearful expressions as they watched the man slowly walk towards the table in front of them. "Get out of my way." The man's words were very cold. However, the four young men sitting at the table all had the intention to get out of his way. They continued to eat and drink as if the man did not exist. "Oomph, a level 1 martial king body cultivator? Interesting. Along, you go and deal with him." After a while, one of the four young men spoke. "Why me?" The young man called Along spat out a chicken bone unhappily. The bone was about to hit the man's face. The man did not mind as he said with a smile, "Well, you're a body cultivator too. Go ahead and let us see whose flesh is stronger." F asterisk asterisk K. Is there a need to see? I'm afraid that if I were to punch him, he would be half dead. My father would beat me to death when we get home. The young man called Along was not willing to do so. The arrogant attitude of the four young men had thoroughly infuriated the barbarian robe guest. The man said with a furious tone, "How dare you be so arrogant? If you don't attack, I'll make you attack. You won't be able to stop me at the Genius Hall." Bang! A strong gust of wind was emitted from the punch. Before the punch arrived, a loud explosion could be heard in the air, as if the punch was going to shatter the table in front of him. The four young men sitting at the table wore furious expressions at the same time. "How dare you? How dare you? Along, if you don't attack, the food on the table will be gone. What's with the noise? Where did this bumpkin come from? A level 1 martial king realm cultivator dares to be so arrogant in front of us. Piss off." Along stood up at lightning speed and threw a punch at the man. The force of the punch was 10 times more terrifying than the previous one. The barbarian robe guest vomited blood on the spot as his body was forced to kneel on the ground. Chapter 473. Taking advantage of one's power to bully others. Along, who had attacked, was also shocked. "Hey, are you from the Namman Kingdom in the North Sea? Are you from the Taishian Holy Land or the Heavenly Insect? Forget it. No matter which side you are from, your North Sea only has the Dark Horse Nan Ruofing and the Heavenly Insect Zhou Tao. There are no other talents. Get lost. You are not qualified to enter the Earth ranking." Along sat down after speaking and continued to eat and drink with his companions as if nothing had happened. The surrounding youths were also in an uproar. What did they see? A playboy from the imperial capital was actually a LV2 martial king. How strong were the other three who had not attacked? Hiss, as expected of the imperial capital. I can't believe that after cultivating for so many years, we can't even compare to a few playboys from the imperial capital. This is bad. With them guarding here, how can we enter the Tianjiao Guild Hall? It's not that we can't enter. If you are willing to pay the bumpkin entrance fee of 10,000 spiritual crystals each, you can still enter the Tianjiao Guild Hall. Along, who had attacked, laughed as he looked at the surrounding warriors. Everyone suddenly understood that these playboys were waiting here to rob the foreign warriors. It just so happened that Guman couldn't hold back his anger and went up to challenge them. In the end, he became the target of killing the chicken to warn the monkey. Their methods were indeed effective. Seeing that Guman, who had a strong physical body, was beaten to the point of vomiting blood by the other party's punch, except for a few LV2 and LV3 martial kings who were still unconvinced and unwilling to pay the spiritual crystals. Many LV1 and LV10 martial honored realm warriors began to waver under the pressure. There were a few who immediately went up to pay 10,000 spiritual crystals to Along. Along also waved his hand and let them enter the Tianjiao Guild Hall. Seeing this scene, the number of warriors who went up to pay the spiritual crystals increased. In less than 10 minutes, Along and the other three playboys had gathered 1,000,000 spiritual crystals. Even so, they were still not satisfied because most of the powerful warriors had no intention of paying the spiritual crystals. This undoubtedly made the four young masters, who were prepared to take advantage of this group of country bumpkins to enter the city and make a fortune, extremely displeased. With a bang, the young man in the lead slammed the table and stood up. "What are you all still standing there for? Let me tell you, you have to enter the Heavens Pride Hall to participate in the Earth ranking today. You only have two paths, either defeat us or pay the spirit crystals. If you don't pay, your name won't be on the Earth ranking this time. Boom. As they spoke, the three young men released their auras at the same time. They had already used the method of killing the chicken to warn the monkey. Now, they were going to use their auras to suppress the others. Looking at their skillful movements, many people knew that it wasn't the first or second time that these people had extorted others like this. A few more fearful cultivators felt that they were not a match for these four youths, so they helplessly walked up and paid 10,000 spirit crystals to obtain the right to enter the Genius Hall. This also made the four youths laugh proudly. Along looked at Guman, who had stood up again, and said, "Kid, if you want to go in, you have to pay 40,000 spirit crystals." "Why do I have to pay 40,000 when the others have to pay 10,000? Guman was extremely unconvinced. He couldn't beat Along, but as the prince of the barbarian tribe, Guman had a strong will. Why? Let me tell you why. You people from the North Sea can't even be considered country bumpkins. You're all a bunch of country bumpkins. Country bumpkins want to participate in the Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking. Isn't this lowering our standards? Don't you want to give us some compensation?" Along sneered wantonly. Guman was completely enraged. He roared and suddenly charged at Along. "Shut up. You can insult me, but you can't insult the entire North Sea. Get lost, country bumpkin. Do you think you can behave atrociously in the capital of the North Sea country just because you have a fortuitous encounter? Let me tell you, if the North Sea wasn't so poor, our king would have destroyed you a long time ago. What 18 countries of the North Sea? I think 18 country bumpkins are more suitable for you." Bang! Without holding back, Along punched Guman again. This punch caused Guman's injuries to worsen. He flew out over 10 meters and landed heavily on the ground. It was also because the ground of the Heaven's favorite guild hall was very sturdy. If it were any other place, Guman would have been smashed into a deep pit. Even so, Guman didn't give in. Instead, he roared furiously and stood up from the ground with difficulty. "I want you to take back your words." "All right, I take back my words. I admit that you aren't a country bumpkin, because in my eyes, you aren't even a country bumpkin. The barbarian body of the barbarian kingdom. Do you think you are very strong?" Along sneered and charged forward. He lifted his right leg and kicked at Guman fiercely with wind and thunder. Guman's eyes were red. He pushed his barbarian body to the limit, but he still couldn't block the power of Along's kick. Bang! Guman's body let out a loud sound. There were already many terrifying cracks on his barbarian body. His blood vessels and muscles were torn apart by Along's kick. Fresh blood dyed the ground red. It was a shocking sight. Immediately, more martial artists had no choice but to endure their anger due to fear and walked up to pay 10,000 spirit crystals. Along didn't look at Guman again. After suffering his kick, Guman would be seriously injured even if he didn't die. Along planned to walk back and continue drinking and eating meat. "Stop. I want you to take back your words." Guman's body swayed as he stood up from the ground covered in blood. This time, even Along and the other three were surprised. "He can still stand up? Along, it seems like you can't do it. You can't even beat a country bumpkin from the North Sea? All of you shut up. You barbarian, aren't you afraid of death? All right, then I'll play with you today." Along's face revealed a trace of anger. He was also secretly surprised by the strength of Guman's body. Bang, bang, bang. Along rushed forward. His moves were like dragons and tigers. At the same time, he roared with wind and thunder as he attacked Guman. Guman didn't show any weakness. He also rushed forward like a madman, wanting to risk his life with Along helplessly. Guman was at a disadvantage in the first layer of the Martial King realm against the second layer of the Martial King realm. His powerful body didn't have much of an advantage against Along, who was also a body cultivator. Guman was beaten even more miserably this time. Not only was his body covered in blood, even his clothes were torn to pieces. His entire body was trampled under Along's feet like a rag. See, this is the result of resisting us. What are you country bumpkins waiting for? Hurry up and pay the spirit crystals. Don't waste our time to drink wine. It turned out that these playboys were recently short of money and didn't have any money to squander, so they came up with this rotten idea to plunder the new martial artists in the city. Although the Heaven's Pride Hall was a place where martial artists who participated in the Earth list gathered, only ordinary martial artists would come to register. For those who had connections or experts like Yi Fei, there would be people who would go to make friends with them. Naturally, they didn't have to squeeze into the Heaven's Pride Hall. Despite this, Yi Fei still decided to come to the Heaven's Pride Hall to take a look. He had the help of the Qin soldiers, but the 10th Prince and the others didn't. He wanted to come here to see if he could meet any acquaintances. Chapter 474. The Holy Land Can't Be Bullied. Qin Bing. What are these people doing? Yi Fei frowned as he looked at the young men. He had clearly heard them call the 18 countries of the North Sea country bumpkins. Because there were too many people in front of them, Gu Man was blocked. Yi Fei didn't know that Gu Man was also here. In order to protect the reputation of the North Sea and the Taishan Holy Land, Gu Man was beaten up badly by these 4 young men. Qin Bing looked at them with disgust. He said disdainfully, "Who else could it be? They're just a few playboys from the Bai family. If it weren't for the power of the Qian family, how could they be so arrogant? Why? Is the Bai family from the capital very strong?" Yi Fei continued to ask as he looked at the warriors lining up to pay the fee. The Bai family is very strong, at least stronger than our Qin family. The Bai family has a very high official position in the capital. Bai Tianyun of this generation is in the top 3 of the Earth list. When Qin Bing mentioned Bai Tianyun, he was obviously afraid. Yi Fei didn't care. He looked around and didn't see the 10th Prince and the others. Knowing that they hadn't arrived yet, Yi Fei planned to leave. In front of the crowd, Along was still stepping on Gu Man's body. He shouted fiercely, "So, country bumpkins from the North Sea, are you convinced now? As long as you admit in public that the people from the North Sea are country bumpkins and that the Taishan Holy Land is a country bumpkin, I'll let you go. What do you think?" Bah! What answered Along was Gu Man's bloody phlegm. "Kill me if you dare. None of us barbarians are afraid of death. Bastard, you think this young master doesn't dare? Just because you dare to spit on me in public, even if this young master crippled your limbs, no one would dare to say anything." Along wiped off the thick phlegm on his face and aimed at Gu Man's legs with both hands, ready to step on them. "It's Gu Man. Why is he here?" Yi Fei turned his head in surprise. He finally saw Gu Man on the ground and was about to be broken. "Bai Xiaolong, the few of you, stop right now." Hearing that Yi Fei knew Gu Man and that the people on the ground were from the Taishan Holy Land, Qin Bing's expression hardened and he strode forward. "Qin Bing, it's you. When did you return to the Imperial City?" Bai Xiaolong saw Qin Bing, and the arrogance on his face lessened. The other 3 playboys also looked at Qin Bing in surprise. They didn't understand why Qin Bing would stand up for the people of the Taishan Holy Land. Qin Bing was too lazy to talk to these debauches. He just pointed at Gu Man on the ground and said, "This person is my friend's fellow disciple. If you don't want to die, then get lost." Qin Bing's words stunned the 4 silk pants. Bai Xiaolong thought Qin Bing was joking and couldn't help but laugh. "Haha, Qin Bing, your joke isn't funny. You treat the North Sea's country bumpkins as your friends. Are you jealous of us making money here? If you want to get involved, just say it." Bang! Before Bai Xiaolong could finish his words, Qin Bing had already appeared in front of him coldly. With a kick, the man vomited blood and fell to the ground. He was injured to a certain extent. "Do I look like I'm joking? You guys are ignorant and incompetent. You'd better be more polite to others in the future." It was obvious that Qin Bing was quite an upright person. The actions of these few silk pants made Qin Bing unable to continue watching. Yi Fei didn't look at Qin Bing. Instead, he went straight to Gu Man and pulled him up. Seeing that Gu Man was unconscious due to his injuries, Yi Fei was even angrier. He quickly transferred a stream of genuine qi to help Gu Man heal. Within the beast mark, seeing that Yi Fei wanted to save Gu Man, the little girl blinked her big eyes and followed suit. She blew a mouthful of genuine qi outside. A miraculous thing happened. After the heavily injured Gu Man absorbed the genuine qi, he suddenly roared. Not only did his injuries heal, but he also broke through the bottleneck and broke through to the second layer Martial King realm. Yi Fei was completely shocked. Feeling the changes in his body, Gu Man's eyes were wide open. He looked at Yi Fei in disbelief. Yi Fei, not only did you heal me, but you also helped me break through to the second layer Martial King realm. Gu Man didn't know what to say at this time. He was really grateful and surprised. However, he didn't know that Yi Fei's heart was in turmoil. He quickly used his consciousness to sense the beast mark. He wanted to ask the little girl what she did. She actually helped Gu Man break through to the second layer Martial King realm with just a breath of genuine qi. The little girl also realized that she seemed to be in trouble. She quickly lay down and hid in the green leaves, pretending to be asleep. Yi Fei couldn't find her again. He was so depressed that he didn't know what to say. Another person from the Taishan Holy Land? My God, what did he do? Not only did he heal his injuries, he also helped him break through to the second layer Martial King realm. Yi Fei's move not only shocked Gu Man, but all the cultivators present looked at Yi Fei in disbelief. The four foppish sons were also a little dumbfounded. However, they quickly reacted. Bai Xiaolong, who was kicked, immediately jumped up and stared at Qin Bing fiercely. He then pointed at Yi Fei and said, Qin Bing, so you really made friends with a country bumpkin. You better think carefully about the consequences of going against our Bai family. Bai Xiaolong, who are you trying to scare with the Bai family? The few of you are nothing more than a fringe member of the Bai family. This young master will slap you in front of everyone. Let's see if the Bai family will stand up for you. Another 3 people walked out from the crowd. They were still dressed like foppish sons. Their tone was even more aggressive than Bai Xiaolong and the other 3. Seeing these 3 people, the 4 arrogant foppish sons were scared speechless. Bai Xiaolong looked at the one who spoke with fear and said, Long Gang, we are just teaching a lesson to a country bumpkin. We didn't provoke you. Why are you standing up for them? Long Gang coldly pointed at Qin Bing and said, Qin Bing is my brother. Qin Bing's friends are our friends. Who do you think you are? When we were foppish sons, you were still playing in the mud. Now get lost, and don't let us see you again. You Long Gang, Qin Bing, and those 2 country bumpkins from the North Sea. We will remember what happened today. Bai Xiaolong didn't dare to say anything. Qin Bing was already difficult to deal with, not to mention that Qin Bing's friend were here. The 4 foppish sons quickly put away the extorted spirit crystals and wanted to leave. Stop, did I say you can leave? Seeing that Gu Man was fine, Yi Fei walked up and blocked the 4 foppish sons' path. Get lost, just a country bumpkin. We will give Qin Bing some face and won't argue with you. What else do you want? Bai Xiaolong angrily glared at Yi Fei. They were afraid of Qin Bing and Long Gang, but they weren't afraid of this country bumpkin from the North Sea. Yi Fei didn't get angry. He just turned his head to look at Gu Man and asked, He was the one who hit you, right? That's right, it was this young master. You North Sea country bumpkin. If it wasn't for Qin Bing protecting you, you wouldn't even be worth a hair in this young master's eyes. Bai Xiaolong was furious and wanted to vent his anger on Yi Fei. Yi Fei still maintained his smile, but his right hand suddenly swung out like lightning. With a bang, Bai Xiaolong's cursing stopped abruptly. His whole body was slapped into the ground like a fly by Yi Fei, who knew how many bones in his body were broken. The pitiful Bai Xiaolong cried out and fainted from the pain. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.